OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, you're very welcome along. It's 7:30. It's Thursday morning, and we have a full house. Shane is here.
Good morning, how are things?
Colm is here.
Morning, Ger. Morning, Shane. Welcome back, Ger.
Oh, lads, I haven't seen you in a while. Did anything strange happen in the world of sport?
I was thinking you missed a certain game, alright.
I missed Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. Nothing happened. Nothing big.
I think. What would have happened last weekend? No, nothing comes to mind.
The relief was palpable.
Oh, Arsenal beat Bournemouth. Yeah, late winner.
That GG wasn't here.
Yeah. The Grand Prix was back, was it?
Bahrain, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, very good.
Medvedev beat Novak Djokovic in Dubai. Big result, which we obviously led with.
Yeah.
And
Allianz League's action. Yeah.
Djokovic not going to Indian Wells, is that right?
Still not going. Still has his beef with the US, or the US has the beef with him. It is real. Hopefully we'll get them both on.
Joaquin is going to be playing against Manchester United tonight. Have you seen that?
Yeah, 55-year-old Joaquin.
Wow, that is an incredible career. Like, he was a hotshot at 17. And Kyle Walker in a bit of trouble.
Yes, bit of trouble.
Just a bit.
There.
Yeah. We can come back to that whenever we're allowed to talk about it a bit more.
It's the best.
Scott Parker's gone.
Patrick O'Connell is the best link.
Yeah, I saw Andy Mitten writing about that on The Athletic this week.
Yeah.
We obviously had the maker of the documentary on last week.
Yeah.
So if I actually haven't seen the movie, I'm dying to see it. Is it easy? Does anybody out there know how to get their hands on Don Patricio? That's the story of Patrick O'Connell. Patrick O'Connell's story is unbelievable, right? Yeah. Does everybody know that he took a bribe on Good Friday to fix the Man United Liverpool game, and that's why he kind of ended up being this troubadour travelling the world.
They win a penalty and he kicked it miles wide apparently.
He did. The game was to be fixed 2-0 for Liverpool, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, details, it's like 103 years ago and my memory's not that good.
No.
But and then he ends up being the manager of Barcelona during the Civil War, and also the winner of a league with Betis, which never happened before.
Their only league to date still.
So, an incredible story, and if you can read it on The Athletic this week, but obviously there's a book about it. Anywho, nothing else happened, lads, did it?
No. Scott Parker, I mean, I feel bad for him. He had a promising, promising managerial career at Fulham. And at Bournemouth, he was doing well for so long. And then after that capitulation at Anfield, earlier this season, when they lost by a lot of goals, that's the one time that's happened this year at Anfield. Yeah. He had to go after that after his post-match comments. And Club Brugge in the Champions League against Benfica, big time. But they got hammered.
Colm, it's Kildare he wants to talk about. Kildare's demise. That's
I just feel like there is something he wants to say, but I think we've covered everything there.
Time to fade a bit there, wasn't I? Well, look, we will actually talk about that with Seanie Johnston a little bit later on the show. He's going to join us to talk to us a bit about Cavan's resurgence and also the situation in Kildare and some other stuff. Owen Farrell's been dropped by England for the rugby for this weekend. Marcus Smith was sent back to play with the club, and generally that's a bad sign. But actually what they were doing was they were giving him a bit of game time and saying come straight back in. Frawley straight into the Ireland setup. Joey Carberry gone. We talk about that maybe a little bit later on. Scotland rising. Nothing else happened, lads, did it?
No.
Nothing else happened.
No.
If you're Joey Carberry, are you a bit mixed feelings now at the moment? Not really sure where you stand in the Irish rugby settings. Involved the last time, gone again. What does Joey need to do to turn it all around? Let's do 15 minutes on that.
His international career is like Roscommon's Allianz League's career. It's the yo-yo, up and down and up and down. Some players get used to it. Joey's used to it, so I don't think it'll affect him.
Well, I think it probably will affect him. Yeah, he's got these next 18 months, if he's ever going to nail down the number 10 slot, the window for the World Cup seems to have closed. He'd need to really, fire Munster to glory on two fronts and be absolutely irresistible in his form. Now that has happened. If you think back to Alan Quinlan's form to get into the Lions setup, obviously for whatever reason he didn't end up making the Lions tour because of the ban, but his form at the end of that season was absolutely spectacular, and he hadn't been in the Ireland squad, so there is a possibility that you can put together a run of form that really impresses the selectors. But at this stage it feels like the window is shut for Carberry, and it's very much open for Frawley, who played last weekend at full back, and the whole notion of Harry Byrne being hothoused has disappeared. But I see a manager, Eric Ten Hag. Do we know him? Is he famous?
He's done quite well.
Yeah, very well known.
Talking about one of his players, Bruno Fernandes being an inspiration. Did you guys, did you bury Bruno Fernandes, the love of your lives? Did you turn your back at him?
No.
Did you forswear allegiance?
I don't think one bad performance has proved Nathan's point correctly.
Well,
I think he showed
a lot of people were suddenly on Team Nathan.
I think he showed a lack of leadership at the weekend, Bruno Fernandes, for sure. It doesn't necessarily necessitate taking the captain's armband off him. I would say Rafa Varane should be the captain.
Was there a bit of an overreaction? Like, was there also a bit of he's a lightning rod for all of the anger and abuse that everybody wants to unleash? It's like, we need the scapegoat.
Well, people hate him, don't they?
What happened? So where was Casemiro at that point in the game? Oh, he'd been taken off.
Play crap, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, Casemiro, he is a one man. He can fix this team with all his culture and everything. It's like, we were wrong about that.
Sorry, but one swallow doesn't make a summer, lads. Do you know? And one bad performance from Casemiro doesn't make him a bad player.
I'm not saying it makes him a bad player either, but he was so bad he was subbed off.
Yeah.
And he has been completely immune from criticism in the aftermath, largely, whereas Bruno has been is kind of like emblematic of every single thing Bruno has ever done has been now is kind of in the negative column,
Because he's a lightning rod. Marcus Rashford was photographed in the rags over in England at the weekend in his massive £225,000 car out shopping, and everyone was like, Rashford spotted in 225k car just hours after United humiliation.
Man drives to shop in his car,
essentially.
Apparently McTominay was down having coffee in a cafe in London, according to Tony Cascarino. Well, it's interesting. It is interesting that he drove 225 miles for a coffee.
What about the Wout Weghorst thing?
I didn't. Oh, no, which bit? Touching the sign.
No, obviously he's come out and explained it and said he was just trying to stop.
He came out with the shittest explanation of all time. I was trying to stop Virgil. Me and Virgil were having a wrestling match. Actually, no. He was like, I'm touching the sign because I'm touching the sign. Yeah. I'm not going to be here again in a meaningful way, am I?
Well, our own Richie McCormick said a man of that height, and he would know. Richie's 6'5". You have to watch signs. You're instinctively put your hand above you so you don't hit your head.
I'm calling that out, by the way, because I'm 6'4", and the last time I was in the office, I'm pretty sure I was slightly taller than Richie.
Oh, shots fired!
Wow. The beef is real. We'll get it back on.
Yeah.
Wow, two beefs now.
We'll try it. Maybe Richie's right, but I question.
No, hang on. You can't back down now.
No, I'm not. I'm like, my brother's 6'5" and I'm 6'4", and I would say Richie's probably just under me. So the 6'5" thing I call into question.
Okay,
but now maybe he wears thick shoes.
Well, he was playing on Devil's Advocate, Richie, and he played it quite well at the time.
But look, I don't know about touching. I feel like if I was going under the Anfield tunnel, I wouldn't need to.
He's a Liverpool fan,
yeah,
and it's a dream come true for him to play at Anfield, and he touched the sign because that's exactly what happened. And it's not a big deal.
He might not play there. He might not play there again. I'm sure he kind of had that in his mind. So this is probably my one shot to do this.
But Roy Keane was right. You're going out to war. Like, touching the sign.
I think it's just such an easy thing to.
I do too.
There's bigger deals than that.
Of course, there are bigger deals.
He's
but
going
it's
out
still
to war.
He's a dose of a move.
Is it?
For a Manchester United player to do that at Anfield, it's a dose of a move.
No. You're like stealing their symbols. You're breaching their sacred territory. You're like, I'm going to smack your sign and I'm going to beat you up. And it would only hold any water if he'd actually done anything on the field, but he didn't.
Would a Millwall or a Spurs player come out blowing bubbles at West Ham Stadium?
You might be bringing it up.
Yeah, but you can't be doing this at your rival's ground. You might be a Liverpool fan, Grant. As a child, that's no problem. And look, I'm not saying this is a hill I'm going to die on. It's not a massive issue, but he shouldn't have done it. It's stupid.
I don't think it's.
You're a Manchester United player. Don't be touching this is Anfield sign.
No, you touch the sign, you bang it.
If you're a Benfica player or you're a Burnley player, Weghorst, do that all you want. Wow. But when you're a Manchester United player,
and is he still great? Do you all still love Weghorst?
The horse, yeah.
In a way, is this not actually really good for Manchester United?
That's what I said Monday morning.
Is there not an angle of this where it's like, okay?
I did have the thought that maybe this is the best thing.
Losing 7-0 to Liverpool is good.
Well, it does.
We are so far off where we need to be proper title contenders, Champions League winners. Like, do you know, they've got back to credibility now because they're competing for a place in the top four. It's like,
but the start of the season, United's ambition was win a trophy and get top four.
Yeah,
they still are not guaranteed top four.
As Andy Minton very calmly said on Tuesday morning with us, that it's undoubted progress this season. So just relax about everything that happened.
Would you give up the Carabao Cup not to have been beaten 7-0 by Liverpool?
No.
It's an interesting question.
It'll be,
because this is an all-time humiliation. Like, it has never happened before. It will never happen in your lifetime again. It is like a massive crisis event. It's like, you know, the oil rig pumping oil in the Miami. In the
there's almost
Florida, off the Florida coast.
There's a lack of respect
for Mexico. What am I trying to say?
There's a lack of respect for Liverpool in all this.
No, Shane. We'll talk about that again. Don't worry.
A lot of it is
dissemination, disassembly.
Liverpool played brilliantly well, and players who were written off like Gakpo and Nunez just performed unbelievably on the day.
Chemical Shane over here spreading. Come on.
You're right though. It'll never be forgotten. Like the way the 5-0 against Newcastle and 6-3 against Southampton that followed the mid-90s, it'll never be forgotten. But as Gary Neville pointed out on Sky Sports on Sunday, United ended up winning the league that season. So, you know, it's what is it? Failure is a bruise, not a tattoo. And this will be a little bookmark in what happened to United.
Do you have that
Casemiro Casemiro performance, it kind of reflects Eric Ten Hag's time at United in that it's largely been very, very good. But then when they lose under Ten Hag, it's quite spectacular, isn't it? 7-0 against Liverpool, 6-3 against Manchester City, 4-0 against Brentford. Yeah. There's only been 2 narrow defeats. That was the first day of the season at home to Brighton, which itself was eye-opening, the 2-1 at Old Trafford. And the other one was 3-2 in January at the Emirates against Arsenal.
Would you be worried about Lisandro Martinez walking in front of the goalkeeper for the first goal?
Yeah.
When it was 0-0?
Again, I was thinking De Gea's view was completely skewed. And also, it took basically very little ingenuity from Liverpool to totally destroy the United defence at that level.
Was brutal.
Very poor. But lads, it's like living a recurring nightmare. This is 4 days.
Sorry, I'm just, you know,
Spurs are shite.
I understand.
This is never going to happen in my lifetime again either, and so I just want to make sure that
You should have been here Monday.
Well, I
was
unavailable for selection.
You should have been here. I was really looking forward to talking about Bayern Munich, PSG, Spurs. It's all there in the notes. Padraig Harrington inducted into the Golf Hall of Fame. So much to talk about.
Look at notes. Yeah, fair.
So much to talk about. Mm-hmm. I just don't think we need to say any more about it.
If anybody else wants to bring any Manchester United related content our way over the next 2.5 hours, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Just title it Record Breaking Defeat. That historic moment. I think you can never.
What do we think of Tottenham?
Love it. I don't want it to be said though. I'm trying to cut down on the cursing in the show.
Oh, what? You are you? Do we curse that much?
Oh yeah, you just you cursed a while ago. You didn't realise. No, not you.
Oh, okay.
We got to stop the cursing.
Right, very quickly, some comment. Bruno, he's a sore loser. It doesn't matter whether it's a free he loses, a goal or a match. If he owned the ball, he'd take it home, says Bohemian 29. Do you not want some sore losers in your team? Do you not want some people who are like, this is unacceptable? I don't know.
Yeah,
I think that a bad moment for him, but actually, like, if you're a manager, you want a couple of those characters.
Yeah.
Now, you know, the game was gone at that stage. It was so weird.
Yeah, it was very strange. Because half time everything was poised nicely. It was a really strange second half.
Is it? I don't know. Is this happening? I'd love like a data deep dive on the explosive ends of matches where, like, even the Real Madrid 5 at Anfield. Like, would that have happened 20 years ago? Would they have just shut up shop at 3-2? Certainly, I don't know.
No, I don't know. It feels like it's such an out of the blue result. Sorry, not result, but performance.
No, but Ger's talking about the trend in modern football. It is true. Jasmine Baba kind of touched on this yesterday about Arsenal this season, that when they have the ball, they switch to a 2-3-5 formation, and there is definitely a lot of gung-ho, risk-taking, attacking football that's happening now, and you're seeing it in the Champions League knockout stages. It started, do you remember the miracle Neymar game for Barcelona in 2017, I think?
Yeah, I was talking about it on the news.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's fresh in the mind. And Joe was saying, geez, the knockout stages the last years have been phenomenal in the Champions League, and they largely have. Now, this season's a bit different. They haven't really got going so far in the last 16. But there is definitely a more cavalier approach.
Maybe it's about cavalier. It was, yeah. All right.
It does feel that way. Yeah. And I think the 7-0 isn't as shocking as it may have once been, but it was still absolutely shocking.
We did a piece with who was the Gerard Houllier era Liverpool architect of transfers, who was making the point that you can't really get centre backs anymore. This is going back, I'd say it could be 7 or 8 years, and we had him on randomly, and he was making the point that the biggest dearth of talent coming through European football is centre backs who can defend. You can have all the ball playing centre backs you want, who are converted midfielders basically, but you can't find those defenders who just love defending. I just love tackling the way Paul McGrath did. That they're not being spat out by the by the academies anymore. And I can't even remember what the theory behind it was, but I do wonder if we're now seeing the bits where, you know, it, like Hansen and Lawrenson, if the game had got to 3-0, would have got the midfielders, smacked them around the chops and said, you're humiliating me and that's not going to happen because I'll break your ankle in training next week. And, you know, you bring it forward 10 years and it's like Pallister and Bruce, and then it's like any of the Manchester United in the latter stages, like would Nemanja Vidic have allowed that to happen?
Nah.
Well, no, Vidic used to get destroyed by Fernando Torres.
Well, yeah,
but 2-0.
Arch nemesis. Yeah.
2-0.
Liverpool hammered United at Old Trafford with Vidic.
What was the score? Was it 4?
4, yeah.
Yeah, but and so it didn't get to 7.
It was a hammering of sorts. I get your point. That
My point is that they stopped at 4.
Generational scoreline, like, but it was a hammering nonetheless.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because...
But I think that's actually, that is the exact example there. So it stopped at 4.
Okay.
Like,
it would still... I would say it was a hammering with a different scoreline. That's it. I mean, it was still
my
the same...
point is that these outliers, it feels like they're happening more because there are fewer...
Liverpool lost to Villa and United lost, or was 7-2.
Yeah, that was the COVID.
6-1.
Yeah, I think we just wrote that off as COVID thing, but anyway. Yeah. Right, anyway, look, Shane was very professional last Monday, and as one person has said, he seems like a really nice guy, says Noel Cal.
So you're going to take it easy on me? I think they haven't taken it easy on me this week.
No, you've had a tough, but you've come out the other side. Shawnee Riley makes a good point here. Lads, the United game is blown so out of proportion. Would you rather have Fabinho or Casemiro in 2023? A talking point.
What do you mean, Fabinho or Casemiro? What sort of a stupid question is that?
Well, that's the whole point. It's rhetorical.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah, you very exercise from it.
Sorry there.
Ger's been sitting at home for the last 3 days waiting for his turn to rub it in. You'll never walk alone, Ger. I am absolutely not a Liverpool fan. I'm an Aston Villa fan, just for the record here.
That's how it works too, Ger, just sitting at home waiting for the text.
Yeah.
You're up.
Right, so you wanted to talk about some other stuff.
Well,
Spurs, the Conte era is coming to an end, right?
Bobby Dwyer's correctly mentioned in the comments here. We're still talking about United 7.
I know, Bobby.
Bobby, you're right. Like we should be talking Tottenham.
History in the making.
Bobby, you're absolutely correct. We'll do that with Martin Lipton later as well. But yeah, like Shane, you were watching the Spurs game last night as well, like myself, we all were. They were dire.
Shocking.
Really poor.
Eric Dyer.
Milan were delighted with it in the first half. There was no shots.
I flipped to Bayern and PSG. I mean, not watching that.
Yeah, I was watching both as best I could, but no shots at all at half time. And the BT Sports studio didn't hold back on their criticism of the game. Rio Ferdinand, Peter Crouch, being like, what is this?
Yeah.
Crouch was like, they need to do the exact opposite of what they're doing now. And look, we'll have John Duggan in later too, another Spurs angle for you, Bobby, and for everybody else. But it does feel like this Antonio Conte era is dwindling with a whimper. Like, this guy does not want to be there. Does not want to be manager of Tottenham Hotspur.
He brings off Kulusevski at one point and he brings on Davinson Sanchez, defender, and the whole crowd's looking around going, what are you doing? We need a goal. What's going on here? And it's like Conte should have taken off with the Milan playing back to Milan because he doesn't want to be there anymore. And
it's funny enough because Harry Kane could have equalised one of the last kicks of the game with a header from Son's free kick, and Magnan pulls off a great save, and then within 30 seconds Divock Origi should wrap up the game and the tie and hits the post in a 1-on-1. But Milan looked just so much more in control, and like if you weren't aware of stadia and football, you would think that was a San Siro because they were just so comfortable in possession. And the thing with Tottenham too, and I think it was Glenn Hoddle made the point on BT Sports coverage at half time, was that they don't have a player to take on a man. Son is their best bet, but Son is totally devoid of confidence this season, and is kind of reflective of Spurs overall. But it just feels like the whole thing is whimpering out, and like we're so used to Tottenham being exciting, especially in the last decade in the Champions League.
Yeah,
they've been brilliant at times. They got to the final in 2019, but they're just so far away from that. And you have to wonder, Harry Kane, who threatened to leave not long ago, really wanted to go to Manchester City when Nuno was briefly in charge. Surely he's gone now.
So he's going to go to Manchester United. Does that work? Is it just a straight thing?
Seems to fit. I mean, Rashford's probably better. I like Rashford at the left, so maybe Harry Kane through the middle. I think it works on paper.
So basically, it's a Kane and Son, except it's these two now, and you have somebody who's vaguely. So Anthony also fits in that team.
I wonder.
Very attacking.
Anthony or Garnacho, one of the two.
I wonder would Real Madrid be a better bet for him because Karim Benzema can't go on forever. Will have to leave soon. He's mid-30s.
Maybe he does.
They do need a new centre forward, but the only thing with Kane is that he'll want that Premier League record. because he's really the best bet to overtake Alan Shearer, which feels like that's never going to be beaten. Like Alan Shearer's super in his graphics for the last 20 years. It's been his all-time Premier League goal scorer, and he's so far ahead of everybody else.
Would you prefer to be a one-club legend, a one-club man legend with no trophies, or would you prefer to go to a different club at the end of your career and maybe be seen as a traitor by these fans, but win a couple of trophies?
Well, you say end of career is a crucial part of that sentence there. If it's the end, I think it's more forgiving. But even just look, one sample size, John Duggan there saying Kane should go, and we'd wish him well. Because
to a Premier League side is different though than going abroad.
Oh, go abroad and you're still a legend.
Yeah, go to Manchester United.
But he wants that Premier League record.
Go to Man United and you're done.
Are you done though?
You are done.
You're done. I think you're done short term, but long term, they'll look back and they'll still reflect on Harry Kane, their hero, and remember that he had to leave because they let him down.
He should go and have a chat with Sol Campbell and see what Sol Campbell has to say about that.
I don't think he's going to go to Arsenal.
Well, at the same time,
I
you know.
don't think he will.
Time heals all wounds for football fans.
But I think Kane wants that Premier League
Sol
record.
Campbell's case.
Well, not for him. Yeah. Don't go to your direct rival.
Okay. My half-baked theory, I'm taking it out of the oven and I'm throwing the cake away. Ger, Man United were thumped 6-1 by City with Vidic at centre-back.
Yeah, another example.
But that's recently enough. Okay. Well, how long? Inside the last 10 years. When did Vidic stop?
Eamon's point here. Would you see Van Dijk high-fiving Fred the Red before a game at Old Trafford?
He didn't high-five.
It's not
high-five.
It's different.
It does not matter.
You're like,
Shane.
He was a little bit. It did look a little bit like, oh, look at this.
It's fucking stupid.
As opposed to like smacking it and going, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to show Anfield what they're missing.
Of course,
that would have been.
He's playing at a level so much higher than he should be playing. Of course, he's delighted with life.
If a Monaghan player at Kingspan Breffni Park touched the Cavan emblem with deference walking out onto the pitch, I'd be like, what the? What are you doing?
What if they fist pumped it or fisted it?
Don't do anything to it.
You know what the narrative would have been had Manchester United won that game? Had they won that game in Anfield, and the Veghorst video came out of him touching the sign. Do you know what it would have been? It was like, he was trolling them. Like that's how quickly these things change.
I think that, like,
of course, the narrative changes depending on the result. But I mean,
yeah, but that's what I mean.
In American football,
so silly. The whole thing is
but it's like, don't touch the fact.
If you do anything on the symbol,
petty
rivalry is good
pre-game. If you do anything on the symbol of the match of the other team, it's anyway.
Eamon S here, a very facetious Eamon. Undoubted progress this season, says Colm. Yeah, last season you lost 4-0 to Liverpool, then 5-0, and this season it's 7-0. Look at the overall season, Eamon, not this one game. This is the problem with modern football analysis. Everybody has short-term memories. Like, analyse the whole apple. Don't just take one bite.
I mean, the problem with living in the moment, Colm, and like, feeling alive.
I do like that too, but also
inspirational quotes this morning, Colm.
Back a little.
Yeah,
thanks, Shane. I was working on a few of them overnight. Yeah. I would like to talk about PSG Bayern. We have a few minutes. PSG, last 16 Champions League.
Are you writing a self-help book? Is that what's going on with the daily aphorisms?
No, but now that you say it,
midlife crisis.
Live, laugh, love.
Yeah.
I'm watching a lot of.
You can have that one.
Watching a lot of Dragons Den clips on. That's my algorithm at the moment. They're showing me those. Some of those pictures are incredible, and also that MH370 documentary dropped on Netflix.
You know what I was just thinking?
It looks very good.
What were you saying? You're watching on YouTube? You're watching.
Dragons Den.
What I'm watching on YouTube right now, there's this the Flight Channel, it's called, where they recreate airline accidents and investigations, and kind of research into what happened, and you have the cockpit voice recorders. So that's the dark holes I'm going down at the moment. So the fact that you just said MH370 when that was in my head, strange.
It's on Netflix. An hour and a half per episode. What is this?
Wow.
How much time do you think these people have?
So now, it's MH370.
Malaysia Airlines flight that
in
disappeared
2014.
Without trace to this day, with over 300 people on board. It was bizarre. Still is bizarre. No one knows what happened.
Kuala Lumpur to Beijing.
Yeah.
Very, very, very strange. Just disappeared from radar and nobody knows. There's loads of theories about what actually happened.
There's an island somewhere where
basically that is one theory. That's one theory. But to segue very cleanly into this, PSG last 16 record, right? They're 6 of their last 7 knockout games PSG they've lost. It's the 5th time in 7 seasons that PSG have been knocked out in the last 16. I know they got to the final not too long ago in 2020, lost by the odd goal to Bayern Munich. They were very good that season. Neymar was excellent that campaign. Of course, he's injured for the rest of the season. But Kylian Mbappe was completely anonymous last night. Now, the surface was very poor to him, but he was still largely anonymous even when he had the ball. And like Bayern were just so far superior and should have won by way more than the 2-0 they did on the night. But PSG, like, what is this project about?
Yeah.
Where's it going? Like
sports washing, that's what it's about.
Ramos was their biggest threat. He nearly scored from 2 headers. Pulled off great saves from the Bayern keeper, and that was it. There was no cohesion in attack whatsoever, no patterns.
Has he announced what he's doing next season? Do we know what he's doing? Because like I would be still keen to have a little bit of Sergio Ramos in my life if I was
in the Premier League.
Yeah, wouldn't that be amazing? If you're like trying to, I don't know. He might become past the point of that having.
Well, Spain have shafted him.
Any influence?
He's had to retire because they don't want him. But he was superb last night.
Isn't he younger than Thiago Silva? Is he that much younger? He's 36.
I think most players are, aren't they? Like Thiago, I think he's one of the oldest players still playing.
He's like 38,
38, yeah. But
38, yeah. So he's got 2 years left,
Yeah.
Bayern were very impressive last night, and I was talking to Phil Egan before the show today and thinking, who are the biggest threats this season in the Champions League? There's no real one dominant side, which often actually feels the case. You're talking Real Madrid, of course, just by muscle memory alone, even if they're not playing that well. Manchester City, you can't rule out. And then Bayern are probably the third team. Bayern are always kind of rated in the final stages. They could do something here, but judging by their performance last night, they're so far ahead of PSG, who in fairness in the first leg in France weren't bad themselves, PSG, but it just looked like they weren't that bothered last night. And you're looking at Lionel Messi, who's had a phenomenal few months. Every time he got the ball, from my count, he gave it away. Every single time he was muscled off the ball.
Yeah, but he's just after winning the World Cup. I mean, he's allowed.
What's that mean though? Like, sure, if that's the case, then don't play him.
Well, it's hard to know. His dad was spotted with Joan Laporta this week, so there's a possibility of him going back to Barcelona, which would be the homecoming that really would be the right thing for him, as opposed to going off to Inter Miami to work with Phil Neville. I mean, is it Xavi or Phil Neville? Which of these two football geniuses will I play out my time with? I don't know, maybe he does a season at Barcelona and then does 3 seasons at Inter Miami for until he's 41 and scores 40 goals each season in America and has the time, and brand Messi explodes and he gets, becomes a billionaire again. I don't know. That's all. The point about Paris Saint-Germain is this is what happens when you don't actually have a plan. This is they're butting up against the glass ceiling of turning Mbappe into the quasi manager, making an individual the most important in the whole thing, and then not fully understanding exactly what the point of football is.
To be fair, Jan Sommer played quite well in goals last night.
He was good, but his distribution was sometimes a bit dodgy. But yeah, he was very good. He made a fantastic save from Ramos's header, which would have given PSG an undeserving lifeline. Shout out just before we go to the blossoming of Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, the former Stoke City striker at 33 years of age. He scored 17 goals in all competitions this season for Bayern. He actually had a disallowed goal last night before his legitimate goal.
Why was that? I saw the replay. Why was that disallowed? I didn't get it. He flicks it, doesn't he?
Didn't
look offside.
It was Thomas Muller was coming in the back post, and it felt like I think it was determined that he interfered with play.
Right.
I actually didn't think he was offside himself.
No,
it looked like a fair goal, but it wasn't given. But within minutes, he taps in very confidently and comfortably to give Bayern the first goal in the night. Taken off shortly afterwards, but even his whole distribution and build-up play, you can see this is a guy playing at the maximum of his confidence and capability.
I see what you did there, the maxim.
Hey.
Good say.
Oh, well, that was on purpose.
Yeah, it was very good. Joshua Kimmich
that one could have been workshopped a bit.
Could have been. Joshua Kimmich is a brilliant footballer. I think he's one of the reasons why Bayern could well win the Champions League. But yeah, I'm all on board the Bayern train.
Headlines very quickly. Down and drought. Another year with no trophy leaves Conte and Kane Spurs futures in real jeopardy. Arrivederci. Top of the morning to you. Italian sob as Kane is floored. Or is it Italian SOB? Oh, son of a bitch. Italian SOB. Italian sob. Was he crying? Was Conte crying? I saw pictures of Conte crying last night. I didn't know if they were contemporaneous or historic.
I didn't see him crying, but he looked like he wanted to cry at times on the sideline, yeah, for sure.
Like, if someone takes your gallbladder out, you're going to be a little bit less, do I need all this?
Yeah, he needs to go back to Italy, and I think he wants to himself. He was even talking after the match. He was like, I think, maybe they'll sack me. In other words, hint, hint, sack me.
Richarlison has also been speaking to Brazilian TV.
Yes.
He ain't happy.
TNT Sports Brazil. It's been a shit season. Suddenly, Stellini put me on the bench against Wolves. He put me on for 5 minutes. I asked why. They didn't tell me anything. And yesterday, they asked me to take a test at the gym that if I was good, I would go to the game. And at the time of the game, they left me on the bench. These are things that it is not possible to understand. Let's see what Conte, will say tomorrow. But there are no fools here either. I'm a professional. I work every day and I want to play. There are minutes left, time left. This season, excuse the word, it's been shit. Because I don't have minutes. I suffered a little with injury. Yeah, he's not a happy bunny, Richarlison.
I think that you could really recast Spurs quite quickly if you get the signings right. So if you sell Kane and you sell Son and you have Richarlison, then you're going to have a lot of money to invest.
The team around him.
The new manager comes in and has £250 million to spend, because there'll be at least 120 plus, say it's 140, that's 140 from those two, and then they add in another 100 that they're going to have to spend. They have been spending anyway, and all of a sudden you could sign 2 world-class players, add them into that team, have a manager who knows what they're doing and who's like really into it. It's not beyond the bet. Like the Spurs situation with that stadium and the match day revenue and the value of the club, it's a pretty attractive job if they get the right person. It looked like they had the right person.
Yeah.
It looked like for a while like Conte might stay. And like that was one of my other half-baked theories. Oh, this might be the one that this is the exception that proves the rule.
I don't think Pochettino's the answer either, is he? He's the 7-4 favourite.
I would definitely bring him back.
Tommy Tuchel 5-1.
They're soulmates. Pochettino and Spurs. They are soulmates.
Why would you go back?
Go back all day long.
That's an admittance. Admission
that particular relationship was special. He got them to the Champions League final.
Yeah, but they played terrible that season. They lost by 12 games.
They got to the final, and when they were playing well, they nearly won the league twice.
They got. I don't know. Okay,
it'd be like Ronaldo going back to United.
They got Ajax in the semis. Like you ain't gonna get Ajax.
Ajax.
Yeah. I mean.
Ball is best.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. It's 8:01. We have Alison Miller and Craig Chalmers coming up. After that, Martin Lipton's going to talk Spurs. 1 JD, please, at 8:40 ahead of the Players of the Tour Championship, which is this week. Players,
yeah.
Seanie Johnston's going to join us at around about 8:40 this morning, and we'll bring you some Conán O'Donnell goodness. The story of an Irishman playing in New Zealand.
Yeah, it's our own Cameron conducted that interview. Should be very good.
In the ad break, you're going to hear the latest from Koi Gig. Kathleen Carron, Emma Byrne and Emma Carroll spoke about Kim Little's brilliance. The Koi Gig pod on Off the Ball is in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland women's national team. Up next, Scotland-Ireland.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
OTB Sports Rugby.
I think Finn can pull teams apart. I think we'll get a real test against him. I'm excited about how we are able to deal with what he throws at us if he gets a good platform. But I think we'll have too much for them.
Okay, it's not.
I do think we'll still have too much for them.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
You had to put Kim Little in there. Kim Little was incredible yesterday. Incredible. And again, a player that I'm really happy for because she doesn't get spoken about enough, and maybe it's because of her age or because she's been around so long, and it comes back to that point of the more experienced older players. We can still give them credit when credit's due. Yeah. Talk about the young players all the time, but any player in this league should be looking at that game again, any midfielder, and having a look at how Kim Little played yesterday, because not only did she completely boss it, but it was a masterclass on keeping the ball, possession, managing the game, pass and everything. She was just absolutely incredible. And, I was really interested to see, because I knew it was going to be a bit of a battle between her and Erin Cuthbert. Because Erin is one of the newer generation playing for Scotland and stuff. And I know Kim, and Kim is competitive, even though you might never have even heard Kimmy's voice before. She's so quiet. She doesn't do interviews. She's literally just had a presence on social media over the last couple of weeks. But she's competitive, and that would have been her game yesterday. She would have been thinking, I need to prove myself here today. She knows how good she is, but not many other people do, unfortunately. But I hope they do now, because she was class. Absolutely brilliant.
I still think she's the best midfielder in the league.
She's just brilliant,
to be fair. But again, it probably is because of her age, and she's not English, so she won't get as spoken about. But
what are you saying?
Nothing.
Yeah. Basically, yeah, you're right. And she's quiet. For me, again, I know I sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but social media influences a lot of people. And I get it. I understand that. But if you know the sport, you cannot leave Kim Little out of one of your, your best team. Not only is she the best team in the league, I think she's one of the best midfielders in the world.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, to rugby. Ireland play a resurgent Scotland in Murrayfield at the weekend. I'm delighted to say Alison Miller and Craig Chalmers are with us to help preview the game this morning. You're both very welcome. Craig, I might start with you. What's the confidence level like as a man who I think our records show never lost to Ireland?
Yeah, I know. It's back in the 90s. I played 9, won 9. Yeah, it was a good time to play against Ireland. But listen, confidence is high. I think obviously the supporters are still a bit pessimistic at times. Journalists are talking up a little bit more than they have done over the years. We've managed to win 2 games in a row. Unfortunately, the ball got dropped in Paris a couple of weeks ago, but it was a good performance, and we showed a lot of good stuff. But yeah, it's going well. I think the players are just keeping their feet in the ground, and this is a chance for us to win a Triple Crown for the first time since 1990. So I know you guys have had a lot of success in the Six Nations Championships, Grand Slams, Triple Crowns, but we've not. So it's a huge weekend for Scottish rugby coming up.
Gregor Townsend was clearly learning on the job when he got the gig. He'd had a brief but excellent period before he got it and was clearly the right man for the job at the time, but has become a much better coach, it seems, over that period. Even you look at the relationship with Finn Russell, the maturity of both of them really at this stage to be able to find an accommodation, whereas a little bit earlier in his career neither of them could find that maturity. Is that a fair comment?
No, I think it's a really fair comment, and I think probably after the World Cup in 2019, I think Gregor was maybe lucky to hold on to his job, but he did, and he changed then. He got a bit more pragmatic. Then there was issues with Finn, and they just didn't get on. Personalities didn't. They had big clash. A few issues there, but at the moment they've made up. They seem like best buddies. So I think Gregor's actually gone back into a bit more coaching, a bit more hands-on the field, which I think has helped the relationship as well. They're much closer. So I think, they're going on really well. And to be fair, Finn's playing well. There's been patches of games that he's coming in and out of the game, but the forwards have played much better. You can't, if you play fly half for any team, you rely on your forwards to produce a platform for you able to play, so you can play off quick ball and, to be able to play in the front foot. And the forwards have been outstanding so far. They fronted up in Paris, where in Paris in the past they've got blown away. This time it's not happening. But this Irish team's a different kettle of fish, totally. I think they're so, they know each other so well. But and they're playing so well. Number 1 team in the world. This would be a huge scalp for us. But, I think it'll be a very tight game.
Alison, we had Andy Dunn in studio on Wednesday Night Rugby and Off the Ball quite recently, and tell you what, he was confident. He was saying there's a lot of talking going on in Scotland, and I think he said 10 to 15 points was going to be the margin of victory. Are you as confident, Alison, as Andy might have been?
Well, there's no doubt Scotland are much improved. They've got a really strong central partnership. I think their pack are very cohesive, really good ball carriers. They're in that lovely place where there's no pressure for them now because Ireland are number 1 and they're favourites, so they can really thrive on that if they take that dog as the underdogs and go there, because all the pressure's on Ireland. They're the team performing. They're playing some really good rugby. I think they rue their start against France, as in they got off to a horrific start but really clawed back the game. Finn Russell is a genius. I love the way he plays, but he kind of reminds me of Quade Cooper at his best. At times could do something brilliant, but then he obviously can do things at times maybe you don't want him to do, but that's his brilliance. Scotland's back 3 are really dangerous. I've always been a fan of Van der Merwe, but it seems like the rest of the world are coming around to his brilliance. I think he's such a well-rounded winger, and he'll offer that physicality if there's not much space. But I think what Ireland will really need to do is what he's mentioned there about slowing down Scotland's quick ball. Like any team, if you can stop that quick ruck ball and stop that go ahead and getting over the gain line, I think you'll stop Scotland's main threats. But they're a much improved team. Their line out is very good. As I said, their back three is dangerous. If Ireland kick to Scotland, and it's something James Ryan mentioned yesterday in a press conference, that their line chase hasn't been as good as it could, and if you let guys like Stuart Hogg or Van der Merwe have those disconnections in defence, they could really punish us. So I think Ireland are probably too good for Scotland at the moment, but this Scotland team are really on the up and their confidence will be high and they're going to be underdogs. But I suppose if you were to make a good point to think how many of the Scotland team would you put in the Irish team at the moment, I'm not sure, but it's going to be a great game. Really looking forward to it. Yeah,
I'd say a lot of the Scots would feel pretty confident on a Lions tour that they would be good enough to beat out their Irish counterparts, because that's the level of confidence they have at the moment. Craig, the reason that it seems to all be coming together is obviously loads of factors. The improvement in the forwards play. There's been a forwards coach who's kind of matured in his role as well, I think, over the last 2.5, 3 years. But the fitness, most of their best players are fully fit. Most of your best players are fully fit at the moment, and that seems to have been the first time in a long time that Scotland have actually had largely a full deck to deal from.
Yeah, there's been much more consistency in selection. You mentioned the forwards coach. I used to coach with John Dalziel, who's the forwards coach at Melrose many years ago, and he's a fantastic coach, and he'll bring the best out. He's bringing the best out of them. He's just been given time to do that. But there's a lot of factors this weekend. Lots of factors. Stuart Hogg's 100th cap this weekend as well. 100 caps for Scotland. I think it was his 100th cap last week, which was included his Lions tour, Lions cap. But I think there'll be the continuity and the understanding of what they're trying to do is getting close to what Ireland are doing. Ireland know each other so well. So many of the players in that starting lineup for Ireland, they play at the same province. I think that familiarity is starting to work with Scotland, and we seem to be on the same page for the first time for a number of years. We were very, very inconsistent, and we've got rid of that a little bit over the last few months. And we've had some close games against the All Blacks who we've never beaten, and I think this game on Saturday will be even tighter. It's on a Sunday. One of the big things that I'm looking at is 4 or 5 of the Irish players probably coming back into the team this weekend haven't played for a month as well. It's really, really important that Scotland have a good start. If Scotland can get a good start and are in that game with about 10, 15 minutes to go, I think it's going to be there for the taking for us. But if we're not, and we're off it by the slightest margin, 5-10%, Ireland will crucify us.
It's a fair point, actually, that a lot of our players aren't fully up to speed, Alison. They've been talking a good bit in the camp about how they pride themselves on training, preparing players for match day, and that seems to have been the case up to this point. And to Craig's point, we've started all our games really well recently. So what do you expect from those returning players? How quickly will they be able to find a groove?
I suppose the big thing that Ireland have always been working on the last while is building their depth, and they've managed the game so far without those key players that are due to come back. So it's how Andy Farrell decides. Will he put them does he put Henshaw straight back in at 12? I think Ringrose is good to go, and I'm not sure about that. But someone like Henshaw, does he come straight back in? Does he put him on the bench? Obviously, Furlong is a big loss, but other players have been doing well. Jamison Gibson Park, will he come back in at 9? Obviously they've backed those players and they've backed how they train to be able to get them up to speed. So it's how Andy Farrell manages. Does he go full out and put those key players back in, or does he put some of them back in, leave some of them off? Are they ready? That's up to Andy Farrell, but that could be an issue because you get momentum from playing games. You get used to your partnerships, you get a feel for the championship. But I think they'll back those players to come in. It's how many they put in straight out is the question. I'm not sure what way he's going to approach that, especially when players have been playing well. So for me, the big thing would be 12. What is Andy Farrell going to do with 12? He's had Aki there. Obviously, he looked totally out of his comfort zone at 13. To be expected, different position defensively completely. You've had Stuart McCluskey playing well. Suppose the problem, as I said before, is our 13 defensively without Ringrose really noticed. I suppose problems we don't see when Ringrose is playing, or does he put Henshaw on at 12? So that to me would be a very interesting one. Conor Murray's been playing very well at 9. Does Gibson Park come back in? So these are all things that we're going to see when squad selection comes out, but I'm not sure how they'll approach it. Obviously having a player like Furlong coming back in that front row will be vitally important. But as I said, they do back their players to get up to speed in training. And it's been a big proponent of this team, how fit they are, and their fitness, how they play, and so it's ball and play, the minutes the ball and play. I suppose that comes from their training as well. So the players are fit enough to go back in.
Craig, is there something different about the Scottish mindset this year compared to recent years? Because at 19-0 down in Paris, you're thinking, well, quite easy for any team to fold over here and completely capitulate. But Scotland showed a lot of heart and fight in that second half, albeit didn't quite get over the line. But to get back to within 4 points in Paris was a sign of a Scotland that's different this time around.
A different mentality, I think. As I mentioned before, we got very close to the All Blacks. We got ahead of the All Blacks. They came back at us in November, but they know they're not far away. And I think it's just been the consistency in selection over the last 5-6 games that's been the difference for Scotland. As you said before, not too many guys out injured. We've got 1 or 2 out injured. Rory Darge and young winger, can't remember his name. Jeez, too early in the morning. But we've got 1 or 2 injuries still. But we just shown our depth. We've got much more depth than we've had before. We've got a couple of wingers who are big and physical. They didn't get the ball the last game. Van der Merwe and Steyn are spring jocks. They've not had much ball the last couple of games. So, we need to get the ball into their hands. We need to get them involved. I need to ask questions of the Irish midfield like they got asked in Italy. We don't know what Ireland are going to pick. But I think nowadays the Scots will be, we know how dangerous Ireland are and how good they are and how disciplined they are and the way they play. But it's just how, I think that we're more worried about ourselves these days. And I think that's really, really important. You've got to look at yourself first and get what you're doing right. I think our midfield's been outstanding. I think Tuipulotu has been one of the key players in our team. Just his communication and his skill sets. He's playing so well with Hugh Jones, who's a real cutting edge for us in midfield at 13. He's sort of come back to his form of maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and Finn's getting all the plaudits, which happens when teams are playing well. They fly us and all, they get a pat in the back, but it's the guys outside them, guys around them are playing so well. I think Ben White as well. You've got to mention him, the scrum half who's come in this year and made a real mark for himself. Pushing out Ali Price. British Lion, experienced player. So, I think there's real confidence in the squad. They seem happy. There's smiles on their faces. The coaches are getting on with the players. They're having a couple of beers. Nobody's going out too late at night or the wrong nights. They're all out. Actually, 2 weeks ago in Edinburgh. 4 weeks ago in Edinburgh after the Welsh game, they're all out. The whole squad were out together. The coaches, players together, having beers in a establishment in Edinburgh, which is great to see. You didn't get that back in my day when you were allowed to go drinking. So that was the point. Listen, there seems to be a real good feeling in the camp, and it's not one of overconfidence. So don't listen to what Andy Dunn says, or getting people put that in the boxes. Scotland are on a good track. They're not overconfident. The public are really, really nervous about this one, because we know how good Ireland are and we respect them hugely. I think it's just a great feeling in the camp, and we got the opportunity to win something this year. So this is a chance on Sunday, and I don't think anybody likes coming to Murrayfield these days. I think it's a really tough place to come and play rugby, and if the crowd can get up and can start well, we can put some real pressure on Ireland. It's really, really important to do that early doors.
Craig, Andy Dunn's comments seem to have certainly been noticed.
Well, you know what? I think he's picked it up from. I think Rog actually said that. Rog mentioned that a few years back he got a bit angry one day, and Rog does get a bit angry sometimes. But us fire halves do. We throw our toys at the pram now and again. But listen, I think he mentioned this putting guys back in the boxes. It's not the players. The players have never got. And that's something as Tom English has said the other day. When Stuart Hall gets asked, how is Scotland going to get on this year in the Six Nations? He's not going to say they're going to get beat, are they? They're going to be positive. Unfortunately, that inconsistency has always hovered over us. This time we won 2 games in a row. First time since 1996 that we won 2 games in the 5 or 6 nations in a row. So we got a bit excited. We're getting excited. We lost to France, but we've got opportunity this weekend to make up for the Paris defeat, which it was a game that could have won. It was definitely a game we could have won. So it's one game at a time for this team, and I think maybe the Irish are maybe a little bit more nervous about us than we are about them this time round, because I think we've shown a lot more consistency and a lot more fluidity in our play. Well, and I think that maybe the Irish get a bit worried, and maybe Andy's just a bit nervous. I
mean, that's very possible. Alison, to the point we started this, where Craig never lost to Ireland, we were certainly chalking down that's an automatic win for us against Scotland recently. There was just a significant gap. and we were doing the same in the World Cup, but all of a sudden we can't do that, right? So, Alison, this matters. Like, if Ireland can beat Scotland and just put a massive doubt in their heads, that's going to be useful when we're in France later on in the year.
I suppose a lot can happen from now to the World Cup, but look, Scotland have really improved. There's no doubt about that. We've said that at the start of the programme here. But like Ireland, it is an interesting group in the World Cup, and I suppose winning is a habit, and the psychological benefit of winning, you can't play that down. But at the same time, I think Andy Farland, the squad will be just concentrating this game today. I suppose they are preparing for a World Cup, but they're, as they all say, and every great player says now, it's one game at a time. So Ireland will have to improve on certain areas, though, because if you look at, they're going to have to target Finn Russell. He is really lethal when there's disconnections in defence, and he'll pick off those disconnections and let players through. And as you're saying there, those 2 centres, they have been really impressive. I've been really impressed with Hugh Jones. I love the way he plays. He's such a dangerous player. He can make anything happen if those disconnections in defence are there. So we're going to have to improve our connections. We had, I think it was 20 missed tackles in the first half against Italy. There was issues in defence. Sometimes we look vulnerable. We can look vulnerable when a team can do what we're not expecting them to do when they really go at us. So that's something that we're going to have to look at. Our back row going to be really important in the game to try and slow down that Scottish ball and not let them attack. But in terms of what you're asking, I just think Andy Farrell will be looking at this game today not today, obviously, at the weekend, and focusing on the game at hand and what Ireland can do, and trying to improve those aspects from the last game, because Ireland are playing really well, but it's certainly not perfect in some areas. So they're trying to clean up those small areas. And I suppose if you look like someone like Porter, maybe needs to improve his discipline a little bit. I think Scotland might try and go at him. He's given away a lot of penalties. So, but
all right,
it'll be key to cutting down Finn Russell's time and space. Really, really important.
It's in the melting pot for sure. Alison Miller and Craig Chalmers, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million, folks.
Thank you.
Andy Dunn has
stoked the fire.
Yeah,
I love that though. We need this. Do you know?
Look, if you're going to be the number 1 team in the world, you're going to have to. You can't make an omelette without cracking some eggs.
Was it before the Welsh game? Earlier on in the tournament, we were asking Quinny about rivalry with the Welsh, and he actually said that he always felt the rivalry with Scotland was filled with a bit more vigour and disdain, maybe.
Well, poke the bear tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%. No, I like this though in the build-up. You need a little bit of bit of fire.
I do think that this match matters for the World Cup in a way that, never give a sucker an even break. You know, if we beat them now, I think there's far less chance of them beating us in a few months' time.
Depends on the nature of the beating, doesn't it?
Well,
if it's a 1 or 2 point win, then all of a sudden
if it's a fluky last minute drop goal, then they're suddenly feeling, we're alive. Whereas actually, if we just go out and control the game and win by 10 to 15 points, then we're in their heads entirely when it comes to the World Cup in France.
Maybe
is that game in Paris? I think the big games are in Paris.
October 7th, Paris. Yeah.
Right. OTB AM with Gillette. With Gillette Labs, get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. As I said a little bit earlier on, the back page headlines are all suggesting that it's arrivederci for Antonio Conte after the team was booed off at half time, and again boos in the Spurs Stadium last night. Martin Lipton is with us to talk to us about this. Martin, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Is there any way this isn't the end for not just Conte but maybe some of the most important figures in Spurs history?
Well, we'll see about the latter, but for the former, he's gone. The question is when. Do they let it drag on to the end of the season, inevitably, inexorably falling apart further and further, or do they act now and get in either next season's manager, who I still suspect will be Mauricio Pochettino, or if they can't get him immediately, let Ryan Mason take it over. There is no appetite from any fan, I don't think, for it to continue. More importantly, there's no appetite from the manager for it to continue. He even said that himself, didn't it? Well, maybe they can, agree for it to happen sooner. I mean, we know what's happening now. The game's up. I think they should just bite the bullet and do it now. But I'm not Daniel Levy. He might think, well, we're going to pay him for 2 months anyhow. We might as well keep with him for 2 months. But I wouldn't.
Yeah, there's still a really good chance that they could finish in the top four. Like, that's not ridiculous at all. If they had a manager who was fully tuned in and they had a plan and they had something that was forward looking and everybody was rallying around, like, the form of the other teams around them is not so amazing that you couldn't see a situation where they could squeak into top four, which would be transformational when it comes to the summer and trying to sign players. So there's actually a lot to play for.
That's why I think they should do it now. I don't think necessarily that a change of manager would spark a resurgence of form, but it might do. And it's preferable to this just creeping sludge which is enveloping the entire squad and team and club and fan base. And it is unfixable. It's, sometimes things reach a tipping point. And I thought before last night that it would be a defining moment, that either, they won and he'd go through at the end of the season, or they'd go out and they would have to get rid. And that, I think, is what has happened now. That performance was pitiful from start to finish. And that comes from the manager. He sets the tempo. He sets the approach. There was no tempo. There was no approach. It was the same tedious, stultifying, boring rubbish that has been actually the hallmark of the entire season.
That's the issue, Martin, isn't it? Like, the results, have been poor in stretches, but the performances and trying to watch Spurs has been a chore, because and you can sense it with the fans as well. There was times during the match last night you could hear the players on the pitch because the atmosphere was so poor. So clearly there's a disconnect there.
They have no faith in what they're watching, and you can understand why. I don't think Tottenham have played well this season. All season they've had the odd game, but they haven't had a run of form. We thought, actually, they're playing quite well now. Now look, yes, it hurts when you lose Bentancur as your best midfielder. Yes, you could do with the goalkeeper. But that's not the reason they didn't win yesterday. They didn't win yesterday because they didn't have the spark or ingenuity. And let's be honest, they were lucky to get away with a 0-0. I mean, Milan, who are not a good team and will go out in the next round, were infinitely better over the two legs. And they're not very good.
You were making the point there. You get the new manager in, and if it's going to be Pochettino, would there be any barrier to them getting Pochettino or Tuchel now? What would prevent them, if they're going to do this business in the summer, give that manager the opportunity to get the team into the Champions League?
The only barrier is if they didn't fancy doing it. There's nothing to stop them. They're both available. They're both unemployed. They're both waiting for a call from a club. They may decide it's too late to come in now, and we risk being reputationally damaged in terms of what we can do with this bunch of players. Or they may not trust the owner to give them enough money to buy more players, different players, in the summer. We don't know. I mean, the one thing you know is that Pochettino is aware of exactly what Daniel Levy is all about. They are still on good terms, and it will galvanise, I wouldn't say every fan, because that's not true, but it would galvanise, I suspect, the majority of the supporters if Pochettino came back.
Peter Crouch Peter Crouch made the point after the game last night, and it was a very valid one, that what is the purpose and point of resting players in the FA Cup against Sheffield United for the Premier League and for the Champions League if you're going to go out and perform like that? Like, some of the team selections have been a bit bonkers from the outside looking in.
Well, you say that, but you look at the team he picked against Sheffield United, and that should have been comfortably good enough to beat Sheffield United reserves, particularly given the bounce the team should have been in after beating Chelsea the previous Sunday.
But it's not your strongest team. Spurs haven't won a trophy in so long. Put out your strongest team.
It shouldn't have mattered, because that should have been good enough. And they did pick the first team against Wolves, and they did pick the first team against Milan, a version of it. But at some point, certain players, have got to start taking responsibility for their inaction or their failures or their disappointment. Son has been very poor this season. He's been outstanding for Tottenham for 8 years, but this season he's been really poor. Richarlison's moaning, and I understand why he might moan. He scored 2 goals all season. It's not enough. Kulusevski, since he came back from the injury, has not been the player he was before the injury. Now, maybe that's because he tried to get back too early and has suffered as a consequence. Romero is a red card waiting to happen every single game. He doesn't think. He's a World Cup winning defender. He's an outstanding player, you would say. And yet, he's a liability. And that red card, just like the one against Manchester City, you knew it was coming before his first booking.
Like you mentioned Kulusevski, granted, as you say, his form hasn't been great this season, but when Spurs need a goal, as they did last night, what's Conte doing taking off a player like Kulusevski for a defender in Davinson Sanchez? Like, you could sense by the Spurs fans' reaction in the stadium as well. They were like, well, what's going on here? Like, some of the in-game decisions are raising eyebrows, I feel, Martin.
I sort of understand why that was, because the one thing you couldn't afford was to overcommit when you didn't have Dyer on the pitch before it started, and you'd already taken Emerson off, so you had no natural defenders on the pitch, and that would more likely you'd be exposed on the counter if you overcommit. So I sort of get that tactically, albeit you send it on Davinson Sanchez, which is another issue altogether. But it played to the feelings of the fans that, once again, he's a defensive, boring, not interested in playing football type of coach. I don't actually believe that, but I do think, and I said, I think actually there were sound tactical reasons for that swap. It doesn't look that way if you don't score.
To go back to what might happen now, just thinking about it, one of the reasons maybe you don't want to come in yet is because you're not sure if Harry Kane will stay or leave in the summer. And if you're the manager who comes in now, then it'll look like your decision, or you've been influencing or been unable to influence Harry Kane to stay. So perhaps you want to come in after that decision has been made and then be free of any association with that decision.
No, because everyone in the world knows it's Harry Kane's decision. You know, if he decides he wants to stay, then he stays. If he decides he wants to go, he tells Daniel Levy he wants to go. No manager can alter that, because we've been here before. I wouldn't blame Kane if he had enough, to be honest. Where he want to go, where he could go now this year. I mean, I think United are having a little push at it. Let's see. A few weeks ago, I thought Kane was going to stay. I think things were in the right direction. Now I suspect it may have changed again. He really, in his heart of hearts, wants to stay at Tottenham. But 2 years ago, he felt he couldn't stay, and that's why he pushed for the City move. And if he has the same view this time, I don't think anyone could really blame him.
If he was to say, just to play this out, say Tuchel arrives and Harry Kane decides that he wants to leave, is there still not some kind of residual sense, well, you weren't good enough to be able to convince him? Do the Spurs fans automatically give Tuchel a free pass if Kane can't be convinced to stay?
Whoever comes in, the fans will accept that it's not the manager's responsibility or fault. I don't think. Spurs, if you remember all those years ago, got in Glenn Hoddle to try to persuade Sol Campbell not to leave, and it didn't happen, and he still left, because sometimes a player makes that decision. No one blamed Hoddle at the time.
Who would you prefer to see? Who would be the most likely to be successful? Because Pochettino obviously would be going back to a scenario that he got burnt out in the last time. He's obviously older and wiser and feels like he could go back and deal with the powers that be in a way that wouldn't result in the same thing again. But it would be unusual enough for managers to go back somewhere when the situation had ended the way it did previously?
Well, I think the reality is, I've said before, that rather than sacking Pochettino when they did, they should have just given him a sabbatical to the end of the season and say, come back in July when you're refreshed because you're absolutely shot to bits. After 5 years, he was emotionally spent, and the Champions League run basically took its toll. Now, you could say actually in that last year before then, they weren't great. Away form was appalling. But I think there comes a point where these days managers don't go on forever, and there is a natural tipping point. But when you come back again, it's a fresh start. I would go for Pochettino. I think it would be the popular choice. I think it would be the right choice. I think Pochettino feels there's unfinished business at the club and that he can take things on. And he does come back having won trophies, which of course was the criticism made of him before. Now, you might say anyone can win trophies in France at PSG. Well, maybe they can. But that doesn't change the fact that he did do quite well at PSG. And he did win the league and he did take them deep into the Champions League.
Sorry, Martin, if Harry Kane does leave for another Premier League club, say that is Manchester United, would that negatively impact his legacy among some Spurs fans? He's clearly a club legend, but you imagine if he heads abroad, it's not quite as controversial as, say, he joins a Manchester United. Will that impact Spurs fans' feelings at all on him?
Some will, but I don't think the majority will. I think the majority would accept that he's more than given of himself a decade, and that he deserves to try and win something elsewhere. Sheringham left and came back, and he was as welcome back as he was when he was there first time. That was admittedly a long time ago, but football fans haven't changed that much, have they?
I wonder if Kane was to leave, would they start to build that attack around someone like Richarlison? But we were talking this morning, Martin, about his comments to TNT Sports Brazil after the match last night, which have been picked up by a number of news organisations. Talked about saying yesterday they asked me to take a test at the gym, that if I was good, I would go to the game. At the time of the game, they left me on the bench. These are things that it is not possible to understand. This season, excuse the word, it's been shit because I don't have minutes. I suffered a little with injury. He's clearly a frustrated figure at the moment, Richarlison.
Yeah, but also as part of it is his own responsibility. He hasn't scored a goal in the Premier League, and he hasn't really looked like scoring too many goals in the Premier League. He had one off disallowed for offside against Fulham. That's it. When he has had his chance, he hasn't particularly taken it. He had 25 minutes last night. I know it's not a lot, but what did he do in that 25 minutes? How many times this season have you watched a game with the Richarlison playing and thinking, oh, yeah, he's got to start the next game? Not many. Trouble is, there's been too many of those players, you say that.
If Kane goes, does it spell the end for Heung-Min Son? Like it feels a bit like Ant losing Deck.
No, I mean, the thing for Son is he's got to find his form. He's been really poor this season. He knows it, and it's now wearing away at him. So he's trying harder and harder and dropping deeper and deeper, and actually being less effective as a consequence. So he gets the odd goal, but he isn't playing with anything like the smile on his face that we've become used to. He came off the bench and scored against West Ham, and you thought, could this be the springboard? And it hasn't been. But he's been there a long time. He's been there 8 years. I don't think there's any appetite to move him on at the moment. But were there to be a big bid from somewhere, there might be a feeling that, okay, it is time to change things up. I mean, football is, no one goes on forever. You've got to change them eventually. It's a question of who you bring in to fill the void.
Well, that's it, really. If you're Pochettino, for example, and you expect that Kane might leave and there's an opportunity to move Son on as well, then suddenly you've got a massive amount of money, plus whatever they're going to promise you, and maybe you get that in writing this time if you're Pochettino, or at least a text message saying, no, we'll give you 100 million. Some facts to try and back up your arguing power, then you can see easily how the team would be recast next season with plenty of spending power in the summer and an attractive manager like Pochettino to bring in new talent.
There's no reason why Tottenham shouldn't be successful in the medium to long term, even in the short term. I mean, financially, they're better placed than probably anybody else because of the revenue that they get in, and the, at the moment, low wages to revenue ratio of 47%. The revenue is going to go up. Even if they're not in the Champions League, they're still going to have 450 million in revenue. This season, they're going to have nearly 500 million in revenue. Very few teams have got that spending power, that financial power. And remember that the debt repayment on the stadium is only 17 million a year. The capital still has to be repaid, but the debt element of it is only 17 million a year. So they're not in a bad place. They can afford to spend a great deal more. They're just, at the moment, choosing not to.
The story that the Glazers perhaps deciding to not sell, does this maybe flush out some other potential buyers for Spurs and rekindle that story? Or what's your view on that situation?
Well, if it's right that the Glazers are deciding to go into this latest idea I hear of basically hiving off the commercial arm and staying with the club and trying to work on that, which is possible, then suitors who were interested in Premier League football and can't get into United will think, what's the next best one that's available? And without question, the next best one that's available for the right price of around 4 billion quid, I guess, is Tottenham.
So, a good chance or like pie in the sky in your view?
Well, I think that Spurs that Joe Lewis would sell, but he wants his money. Daniel, I think would be probably more reluctant to sell because what does he do after football? His football, the football club has become his life. But as I said, nothing goes on forever. There are investors who've already looked at Tottenham. At the moment, they're not willing, it seems, to meet the valuation. But if they're the biggest property on the market, then maybe that valuation does become more realistic.
Yeah. Well, availability drives or demand drives price. So great to have you with us, Martin. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
It's Martin Lipton giving us his thoughts on the Spurs situation. Ange would sort Spurs out, says Lorkie in our comments, setting a bomb off this morning.
Celtic fans will not appreciate that. They never do. Ange has been linked with so many jobs, so he's going to continue to be linked with every single Premier League vacancy that comes up.
You were obviously, or somebody was wrong on the show about Leeds not being, and Celtics. But Spurs come calling for you. Ange's going to have to be. Need to have a chat about this one.
There's Cameron. Cameron said Leeds are a bigger club than Celtic. I'm calling him out there.
Need to have a chat about this one.
Yeah. That's a big shout for Ange Postecoglou. Does he go or does he stay?
John Duggan's with us. John.
Ger Shane, how are we doing?
Conte's gone. Not officially, but like he's. This is not news that we're saying that
the
Conte's
writing
gone.
is on the wall.
But it's the fat lady is singing loudly.
You could splice together 10 different John Duggans with 10 different jumpers, and it's probably only about 4 jumpers, but of me saying exactly the same thing. And I don't want to bore our great audience. I know we've got a great audience, and I don't want to bore them by saying the same thing. But it just feels like I'm going to say exactly the same thing as I've been saying for the last, 5 years on the show.
It's funny that you talk about there being 10 John Duggans. You know, I'm a big space geek, and the idea of parallel universes, and because the universe is infinite, that means there are an infinite number of universes out there where every single eventuality is covered. But I almost feel like in every single possible parallel universe, Spurs are still Spurs. I feel like that's the only definite in every single parallel universe.
That is consistent.
And John Duggan walks in every one of these universes sad with his scarf and sometimes top
Spurs
hat.
are the cockroaches of our time.
Potentially.
That when the Holocaust of nuclear proportions comes, they'll still be there being what they are.
Fifth.
Yeah.
That's
what I'm concerned about.
Conte's gone, no fight. What's Conte known as being? He's been the Tasmanian dust devil on the sideline. Now, he's had a very tough time with, he's lost a lot of friends. He's had surgery. So, look, you can have a human empathy for him and his family are in Italy, but I just think he just looks resigned. I think he'll be gone. He told Italian TV it's just a shrug of the shoulders about the whole thing. The Sheffield United thing was disgraceful because they could have put out a team that would have beaten Sheffield United and maybe gone on a cup run and won an FA Cup, and that would have been great. But now there's about 8 or 9 headlines I can give about all this. So the top 4 thing, we're talking every single week, we'll get in the top 4, they're 2 points off, they're Liverpool going to do it, or Chelsea, or, And then when you're actually in the competition, you got a chance at the quarter final, and you turn out a lifeless performance, and you have no zest whatsoever to your play. So I don't really get this top 4 thing. Second thing, Harry Kane deserves our blessing, and he deserves to go now.
Even to Manchester United?
Yeah, anywhere. Harry Kane has nothing to prove for Tottenham. He's a record goal scorer. He's a world-class player. He's a total model pro. He deserves better than what he's received from Tottenham apart from the wages, over the last few years, and he deserves to go and chase his dream, as it were, because it's not going to happen at Tottenham unless he wants to be a record-breaking striker or a one-club man. The owners are great business people. They've built a magnificent arena, but they don't understand the football product. They had Pochettino there. They stumbled upon a brilliant manager. Maybe that's unfair to them, and obviously they hired him and everything. But their hiring and the fluidity of the hires versus success has not been great in terms of the relationship between the two. And they didn't back Pochettino. I know they're building the stadium at the time, but sometimes you just need to just speculate to accumulate. And now we're in a situation where you got Beyonce playing all these nights and the Red Hot Chili Peppers and all this and go-karting and rugby finals and everything, all these kind of things. And these are really important things for the revenue, all that. But it doesn't feel like the football product is number one. There's nobody coming through the club. Oliver Skipp's a lovely player and everything, but there's nobody coming through. So the recruitment is obviously poor from a signings point of view and from an academy graduate point of view. I can go on and on.
That's the point. He's lovely. He's grand. Like that's there's too many.
One League Cup in 22 years should tell you everything you need to know. Now I know they were unlucky not to win something in the Pochettino era. They were second in the league, best finish since the 60s, reached European Cup final. These are all really positive things. But silverware is still important. Even Wenger won trophies when he was on his wane.
Who do you want?
I quite like Thomas Tuchel, but then people, it's another Chelsea reject. I just don't think we should go back to Pochettino. I don't think in life you ever should go back. And if you're going back to Pochettino, you get this romance. The board get a free pass, and they don't deserve a free pass for 3.5 years of waste. If you bring Pochettino back, and Pochettino has not won trophies. Thomas Tuchel is a irascible type of figure, but he is a proven winner. He won a Champions League.
Liga. There's a trophy, isn't he? Didn't he win Liga in the end?
Yeah, I think he did.
That's not a real trophy.
Thomas Frank, Graham Potter, when he gets the sack at Chelsea, will be available.
Graham Potter's turned things around, Shane. I think you'll find a week's a long time in football. 2 wins.
But I think whoever the manager is, I think there are more structural issues at the club in terms of the players coming through, the money that's available, the wage bill, that you can't really necessarily compete. And look, the problem for Tottenham is that you're going to have Newcastle, Liverpool, Chelsea all stronger next season. Like Chelsea do have good players. Chelsea have better players. Tottenham don't have a good enough squad. Their best defender is mad in terms of his decision making. Like that was crazy stuff last night. And then Conte takes off a striker for Davinson Sanchez.
Don't understand that.
Okay, Ange would sort Spurs out. Is the comment? Would you like Ange?
I like anybody. Ange is good, yeah. But would Ange? See, once again, would Ange get what he wants at the club? I just think that if you look at the All or Nothing documentary, Daniel Levy has got too much. Can you beat Daniel Levy in terms of winning arguments? And I don't think anybody can.
Well, they're going to sell. So let's assume that they sell Harry Kane, right?
Yeah.
And they'll have all that money. And then there's a good chance, I think, that they sell Son for something between 25 and 45 million, depending what the market is like. It could be, somebody might pay a crazy price for him, but he might go cheap because his form hasn't been great, right? So that's at least 140 million. Plus, they actually did spend quite a lot last summer. So you have to assume a new manager comes in and he gets 100. That's 250 million.
Yeah. The only thing
it doesn't go very far these days, sure.
Can you trust the recruitment? And I suppose the one thing about, if you look under the bonnet of football, the recruitment is so important. The people who made all those decisions at Liverpool, they did such a brilliant job over the years. The disaster that Everton and Manchester United have been in terms of recruitment. And Tottenham had a really good guy called Paul Mitchell there, worked with Pochettino. He's really good at recruitment. And the last few years, you have to say the recruitment has not been good enough. But then again, you can't blame the board for the way they played against Sheffield United and for the team that Conte put out. You can't blame the board for everything. I think it's a mixture of a load of different factors. And the one angel out of this is Harry Kane. Even Son, as you say, with top of Son, has really disappointed this season.
Peter M. trolling. Would Levy go for a cheap option and get De Zerbi or Lampard?
Well, De Zerbi's a very good coach. Lampard, no.
These are not the same thing here.
No.
I'm going to do this one. Bobby Dwyer says, complete bollocks about Kane deserving more. He's had ample opportunities to win trophies, 3 cup finals and chances at leagues, never showed up in a final. He was injured in the Champions League final and shouldn't have showed up, and it wasn't, he was, I think.
So the one thing I've always disagreed about with it when it comes to Harry Kane. The one thing I didn't like about Harry Kane was that he wasn't really fit and Lucas Moura should play. But in the grand scheme of things, Harry Kane has been an absolute legend for Tottenham.
Sorry, he meant Thomas Frank. Not Frank Lampard, apparently.
Sorry.
Okay.
These are not the same thing.
How are Arsenal doing it to a degree? Do Arsenal have really any massive stars in their team? Odegaard, possibly.
Martinelli could be.
Yeah.
But Saka is turning into one. But
we're not talking about superstars here, and they're top of the league. So what are they doing right that Tottenham are doing
well,
wrong?
they recruited Martinelli and Saka, and they brought them through. And Odegaard was, a bit of a money ball in that here is somebody who has been undervalued and is not making it somewhere else. And so that speaks to your point. They do have a recruitment policy that seems to be working. Now, again, theirs was under fairly significant microscope 18 months ago when things weren't going well. So this can turn around pretty quickly at these super clubs in particular, where you do have spending power and you can sign players. The two lads that they got from Juventus have both been excellent signings. So there's the bones of something there. It's just they're striking out too often.
Bentancur is injured, yeah.
We got to go, but Pádraig Harrington.
Yeah.
We got to talk about Pádraig Harrington before we get there. So.
Yeah, World Golf Hall of Fame. Only 3 Irish people, because obviously women as well are involved in this, can have been in this. So Christy O'Connor Sr., Joe Carr, and Pádraig. So I've always said, and I've said this about 15 years, I think Pádraig Harrington is the greatest ever sports person we've had in this country. And that's not a take for a digital hit. It's a take that I have just because I've always felt that he maximised every single piece of talent that he had to win 3 major championships. And it's not about him maybe the most talented golfer. Obviously Rory is off this island, but Pádraig Harrington got the most out of his talent.
You have him ahead of Roy Keane?
Yeah, I just felt like Roy Keane let himself down in Saipan. Roy Keane let himself down in Saipan.
That doesn't impact whether he was our greatest sports person.
But I think you need to show up. You need to be at a position where you're playing at World Cups, and like this is like we could talk for another half an hour about this, and I don't want this to be taken. Roy Keane is an amazing sports person for this country, so I'm very positive about Roy Keane. But if you're asking me to give my judgment on one thing and why I would say Pádraig Harrington is our greatest, there's just this little quirk with the Roy Keane thing that kind of puts me off.
Yeah, and I think he was our best player at the '94 World Cup when he was only a kid.
But when we had a better team in 2002, and when push comes to shove, you need to be playing at World Cups. So it's just a little kind of a kink, just in terms of my own personal judgment of what all the ingredients are to make somebody really, really, truly great.
All right, let's be having you. Who is our greatest ever? You can join the YouTube comments. You can tweet us at OffTheBallAM. And racing today, Thurles is off because the snow is general all over Tipperary.
It is, yeah. And obviously we're 5 days out now from Cheltenham? We're heading over next week, and hopefully we'll give you some good advice and good stories, and talk about plenty of Irish winners. 18 last year, and hopefully be a lot more to come. But it is Willie Mullins against everybody else.
It's we'll get into that a bit more obviously over the next few days. It is 8:52 this morning here on OTB AM. Some highlights from the podcast network today. You can get Football Daily. It's your daily football fix with Phil Egan in bite size. Wednesday night rugby, obviously building up to the game against Scotland at the weekend, and the football show. Make sure you subscribe to our football feed, follow Off the Ball across our social channels, and subscribe to the OTB podcast network. After this short break, former Cavan footballer Seanie Johnston.
Watch OTB AM live every weekday morning from 7:30 on YouTube. Just subscribe to the Off the Ball channel so you don't miss a thing.
Manchester United returned to the Theatre of Dreams after last week's 7-goal nightmare at Anfield.
I don't think it's Manchester United. It's really bad and poor.
They entertain a Southampton side fighting relegation and finding form.
Bowler from David De Gea. Southampton lead Manchester United.
Join me, Stephen Doyle, with Brian Kerr for all the build-up to the 2 o'clock kickoff. Then it's over to Nathan and Kenny at St James's Park, where free-falling Newcastle will try to fend off the Wolves from 4 p.m.
Finish! Matt Longstaff! Finish! On your debut!
Live exclusive Premier League football on Off the Ball this Sunday from 1.
The Heineken Champions Cup is back. Leinster take on Ulster in the round of 16, Saturday, April 1st at 5:30 in the Aviva Stadium. Join the Sea of Blue for this massive inter-provincial clash. Tickets on sale now at leinsterrugby.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
It's 8:53. You're very welcome back to OTB AM this Thursday morning. Good morning, Seanie Johnston. How are you getting on?
Morning, man. How are you?
Yeah, very well. I'm going to reveal a little bit here. We were thinking earlier on in the week who'd be good to talk to about what's going on in Kildare. And also, we should talk about Cavan. And your name came up. And then overnight, it turns out you've done a massive 2.5-hour interview with the GAA Social.
It felt like about a 6-hour interview, to be honest.
Did it?
Look, I haven't listened to it now. I don't think it only came out last night, so got a few messages from a couple of lads there. So some of them have been tuning in early, I think.
Are you nervous today then?
Yeah, I am. I don't know what the feedback will be like from it. I suppose it was very revealing. It was the first time I probably really sat down properly and discussed the whole incident. And look, it was pretty honest and pretty forthcoming from myself. So yeah, we'll see what comes out of it.
And look, obviously everybody can go off and listen to it. We only have 15 minutes here, so it's not going to be anything similar. But was that something that you kind of felt like you needed to just have that conversation, get it over and done with? Because it feels a little bit like you kind of wanted to tell your side of the story and reveal the toll that it took on you.
Yeah, well, I suppose I never did it, and it was probably hard to do. It was something I found very difficult, even bringing up the subject, to be honest. I'd kind of run a mile from it. So I have my wife to thank for pushing me down that avenue. So, yeah, look, it's done now. It's out there for, people can obviously listen to it if they want to. Some people are probably sick of the whole of listening to it. So, yeah, look, it obviously wasn't easy. It was a tough part of my life, I suppose. But look, yeah, we just keep moving on now. Yeah,
and I do think sometimes that, like, I don't know, obviously therapy and closure and all that kind of stuff, you never really get closure, but like it feels like you said the incident there was how you refer to it. So it feels like it's still something that's a little bit at arm's length for you. It feels like you kind of, in retrospect, I was going to introduce you, the script said former Cavan and Kildare footballer, and I edited out the Kildare thing just on the basis of having read
very
the bits.
kind.
But it feels like you don't consider yourself a former Kildare footballer at all, really.
Well, look, I didn't produce anything for them, which is very hard for them to. It's one of the things I said. Like, they certainly didn't get the player that they thought they were going to get. It was just pretty hard, I suppose, for me to perform to the level that I wanted. I just, I found it difficult. I've said all that in the interview, where I was probably so focused on still what was going on in Cavan, because look, I grew up wanting to play with Cavan. I absolutely love it. I love Cavan. I know a lot of people will throw that back at you. Well, you don't really. Yeah, it was just something that I think as a young child, when you achieve what you want to achieve in terms of playing with your own county, there's a rawness there, there's a passion there, there's a desire there. I thought I would be able to do that, but no, I just wasn't able to do it. So it was unfortunate.
Do you feel by talking about it now you might actually be able to kind of not give advice, because that's wrong, that kind of position you as some kind of, but like just be an example to other people who might be considering going through it, that actually you kind of need to play a bit of chess and think, what are all the repercussions of this?
Yeah, I think I have an empathy towards people. I have chatted to a couple of people in the past who've been maybe not as high profile of transfers, but I think it's important to take into account everything, not just the football side of things. And maybe mine was, I don't want to use the word more high profile, but it definitely got more media attention than most people's would. But there is another aspect to it. Like, there's the personal aspect to it. There's your own family's aspect to it. So, and it's something that will stick with you. And it was something that I was very naive around. I just thought that it would pass through fairly straightforwardly. Obviously that didn't happen, and you learn from those experiences. But yeah, no, it's definitely something that I have empathy towards people that are, looking to maybe do that, or even, go from different clubs or whatever it is, or just even going through tough times, to be honest, that you're able to just know that there is a way out of it, to be fair.
It normalises it too, Seanie, like I guess the Shane Walsh incident, if you want to call it an incident again, brings it back into the conversation. But you talking about it, and like for someone like myself, I hadn't even realised, the background of the whole Cavan thing, and getting dropped from the Cavan panel by Val Andrews over the phone in 2011, and the impact that would have on you as well. So I guess telling the story explains to a lot of people the rationale and the reasoning behind the decisions that you made.
Yeah, look, maybe I should have come out earlier. I suppose at that stage, it was everywhere, like, and I didn't want to add flame to the fire by coming out and doing interview after interview, and trust me, like I'd say I was approached nearly every day to do interview after interview. I did one interview, Colm Keys, and at the end of the whole thing, when everything was done, Malachy Clarkin approached me, and he was extremely nice and brilliant, to be honest. And after that, I just didn't do any more. I was trying to nearly play it down in my own head, and trying to play it down in that I wouldn't be adding fuel to the fire or adding flames to the fire. But it took me a long time to sit down. I know Thomas and Ushin, and they mentioned in the pod, they probably had looked for me to do it for maybe a year and a half at that stage, and I'd constantly said no to them. And the main reason I'd said no was I was involved with the Cavan setup in a coaching capacity, and I didn't want to make another scenario where it was just about me. I was completely bought into their environment, and the setup was going really well, and I wanted it to be about the players and so on. So I didn't do it at that stage, and I didn't want to do it either. I was putting it off because I'd played around with it so much in my own head that I suppose I wanted to forget it, and I was trying to forget it and trying to move on with my own life. But look, hopefully it helps someone, and if someone can get something out of it, then that's good for me.
It must have been a cathartic process in many ways as well, because even listening to you talking about being self-conscious of people talking about you, and that must be tough, because at the end of the day, this is an amateur sport. These aren't, you're human beings at the end of the day, so to have to deal with that or have that floating about your head must have been extremely difficult.
Yeah, it was very difficult, but at the end of the day, they probably weren't. Some of them were, but it was my own demons in my own head rather than anyone else's fault. It was just the self-consciousness side of things, and I don't know. People will probably say this is wrong. I don't want a big, massively high-profile life. I didn't want it at the time. I didn't know what was going to happen. Again, that was naive on my own behalf. But yeah, you're walking around, and it was everybody seemed to be talking about it. It was in papers everywhere, and again for me it became a confidence issue where I was so insecure in myself that I was probably thinking that other people were constantly in conversation about me. But the reality of life is that people are so busy and people have their own things to deal with. I wasn't that important. I just had made myself more important in my own head than I actually was, I'd say. But yeah, look. I think things pass on, and it gets better.
I do think that's an interesting and maybe a little bit peculiar to Irish sport in particular, in that if you come through at an early age, you're kind of hothoused. You're asked, and this happens in lots of counties. Maybe the bigger counties are actually better at dealing with this because they've had more people, and there's less focus on individuals because there's success there. But if you come through in any county, be it Kildare or Cavan or Donegal at an early age, and you're kind of the next great thing, there's not a whole heap of time for you to develop the rest of your skills as just a grown up. You're kind of your entire.
There was definitely no media training anyway. I can assure you that down here. So I see a lot of the top counties now are employing nearly media experts and for their players to. And I probably came out with some silly things at the time when I think back on them as an older person, more experienced person now. But as you said, look, I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't see it coming, and then you're in a scenario where you're constantly being asked questions, not just with a microphone in front of you, but just in terms of locally, questions coming left, right and centre. And I wasn't prepared for that. And it's hard for me to admit that because, I think it's hard to admit fault in anything. It's hard to admit that you're not prepared for something in anything in life. But, I would have classed myself as, articulate, able to handle myself in conversation. But when I don't want to use the phrase, when the gun's to your head or the microphone's in front of you, it becomes more difficult.
Yeah, and I think as well, Geezer had such a power of attraction for the media that anything that he did, there was a year where Kildare went through the qualifiers and every game was on telly. And that they had reached a point where everybody was interested in them because McGeeney is such an incredible character, and a lot of people didn't really like the fact that he was in Kildare, and so therefore there was kind of people waiting to smack him, even within the county, as it turned out. And when famously they knifed him by a single vote, and that worked out really well for Kildare in the long run. So I think that probably fed into the atmosphere around it in a way as well. I just last point on this, because we didn't get John to talk about this at all, but obviously the story just broke overnight. You've started your coaching journey, and maybe it's important for you to get that parked and done, and everybody go, okay, that bit's over, as opposed to waiting for that story. Do you know what I mean? In a way that this all makes perfect sense now in terms of timing. You're totally ready to talk about it turns out, and as you say, articulate whatever it was that happened at that time. But also now you can begin to use it as something you've come through adversity and hardship and experienced that, and now as a coach, when you're talking to players in whatever changing room, they're like, okay, well, Seanie's had his ups and downs.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And, you know, I'd like to hope that one of my strengths is that, you know, is honesty with my players. I have no problem sitting down, and I probably find it a lot easier to talk to them 1v1 about my own experiences than I would to talk to anybody else. And I think it's something that they appreciate. I think it makes you more human. You know, there's an element of coaching or management where there's a management v players scenario, or they see you as maybe a different type of figure, and that's certainly not the manager that I want to be. Yes, there's obviously it's not a divide, but there's a difference between management and players, and there'll always be an arm's length there. But for them to know that there's a human element to the management side of things, that there is someone here that has gone through adversity and hardship and has found a way to bounce back and wants to delve into those things and wants to be able to give his experience to those players, I think that can be a powerful tool for coaches and management.
It's funny that you say that how your influence can rub off on your players, because Geezer moved to Nafina, so he went through a club switch as well. So like, maybe was there an element of you getting, I guess, being comfortable with talking to someone like Kieran McGeeney about it, because he had been through, I don't want to say something similar, but you know, he had transferred.
Yeah, to be honest, there wasn't much of a conversation around that with Kieran. It was like, okay, this has gone through now. Get yourself ready, get yourself prepared. Let's get ready to go now. There wasn't really much around how you feeling or so on. So it was like, yeah, and I can understand that. You know what I mean? He probably had taken a lot of flack around the whole thing as well. I certainly took a lot of flack. And then he was looking to go, okay, help me here. You know, become a better, you know, make this team better, be a better player, improve yourself. And I'll be honest, I learned a lot from him. A lot on the mental side of the game, you know, how he thinks, he's obsessive about it. But yeah, look, it didn't work out, and I've gone through the reasons, I suppose, in the pod about why I feel that it didn't work out. And people will always say, "Oh, look, you know, you were too big for your boots. You weren't as good as you thought. You didn't perform when you went down there." And look, they all have valid reasons for that. But in my head, I have a strong reason why it didn't work for me.
As a Kildare fan, I thought maybe put him in, give him some minutes, let him build some patterns of play with his teammates in the match environment. I thought, like, you know, how are you going to prove it if you don't get a chance to prove it?
Yeah, I suppose that was difficult as well. In the 2013 National League, you know, I started off really well, actually. You know, we played Kildare played Cork, and they played Kerry, and they played Dublin, and you know, I was scoring quite freely, and then I picked up a knock, and it just never really got back to the levels where I had been at there. So yeah, look, when you're not playing, it's hard to get I suppose an idea of different movement patterns of different players, when players are going to deliver the ball and so on. But you know, I don't blame anyone else for me. I wasn't doing enough on the training field, and Kieran, in fairness, he's very clear on that. You know, he's picking the team completely based off what happens in training. And as a coach and manager now, as a player, I probably didn't agree with that at the time. In my head, I was like, in the match, I'll be fine. I'm probably not the best trainer in the world, but I can fully see the idea of competition now. It's everything that I will base my own coaching and performance in terms of my management on will be how our players performing in training, because it's just so important.
And do you want to be an inter-county manager at some point?
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, I've got, I suppose, an insight into what it's like in the environment now. I absolutely love the high performance environment of it. It's tough. It's time consuming. With a young family, it's very, very tough. For me now, I would be doing a disservice, and it may never happen. Is the first thing to say. You know, I may never be good enough for it to happen. But I need to go and learn now and get better and keep on improving and keep on upskilling myself, that if the time does come, that I'm ready.
You're making the right steps. You're involved in Monaghan club management now with the reigning county champions Ballybay. I suppose the first step is to keep Peter Pan, Paul Finlay involved for another year.
Yeah, what a guy. Really, really top class person, first of all, a top class player too. So that conversation will happen in due time. Paul has earned the right to take his little break there over the last few weeks. I'm sure someone like him is keeping himself in in good shape and so on, and that'll be a decision purely based for Paul and his family and where they're at.
Are you younger than him?
Yeah, I'll always say I'm younger than people. I never reveal my age, but yeah, I definitely am younger than
him. And I'm very interested in this. As a manager, what is your view on the way that the game is going at the moment, particularly teams' ability to attack or their desire to attack?
Yeah, I don't buy into this negative vibe. I love the way the game is going. You know, you're seeing a lot of different types of games. I watched Derry Dublin at the weekend. I absolutely loved it. I watched numerous games over the last couple of weeks. Different teams are trying to play different ways. You get different, I suppose the culture in different counties sometimes is different. Obviously, you know, the culture in Donegal, for instance, is very different to the culture in Cavan. But it's exciting, like, it's intriguing. I think people love giving out, like, instead of just going, okay, yeah, there's parts of the game that need to improve, absolutely. And there's parts of the game that have come on absolutely leaps and bounds over the last number of years. And they're going to continue to progress and continue to expand. Like, I'm watching Derry at the minute. I'm absolutely loving watching them, the way they're trying to play, different elements of their attack. And people are going to nail Derry for being a negative team. You look at the amount of times they'll find 5-6 players in at the end line holding their depth in their attack for different reasons. They're trying to get hard runners and leave the space out around the 45, and then they're giving themselves options to little pop passes or marks or so on. So,
is that this season though, Seanie? That's what I'm wondering. Like,
I think they've got better at it this season. Okay. I think they were trying it last season, but I think now if you look at them, yeah, will they defend with 15 behind the ball? Absolutely, because that's the way Rory wants to play, and that's the way he feels that he can keep his opposition to low numbers. But their transition now from defence to attack is rapid. They're gone, and they're getting. You'll see Derry when they turn over the ball. There's about 4 or 5 players that will have nothing to do with the ball, and they will sprint as quickly as they can to get to that 13-metre line to give themselves that depth in the attack, give them the option to pop that little ball in. And with Derry, a lot of times it will be by fist because they don't like to kick the ball that much inside the opposition 45. But maybe that's their next step in their expansion. I don't know what we're looking to do.
There have been markedly less goals, noticeably, Seanie. Like, the attacking mark has been blamed for a lot of that. Like, as an inside forward, what's your take on the attacking mark? Because clearly, catching the ball, coming down and scoring a goal it's kind of taken away that art form.
Yeah, it is. But as an inside forward, for me, it's a dream. It should be. And to be honest, I don't think it's something that teams are utilising near enough. In terms of to me, it's something that needs to be expanded in terms of teams need to look for this mark. It's there. Okay, we need to get over it. The GAA will make their own decision on whether it's going to stay or not. Is it the best rule in the world? No, but it's in there. So teams now are going to start looking at, or if they're not, they should be, okay, let's use this attacking mark to our advantage. At the end of the day, a corner forward gets a ball 15 metres, 20 metres, 25 metres from goal with a free shot, they should score. So, you know, teams need to find ways, I suppose, of getting to the magic number for me of 19, 20 points, and gaining 3 points from attacking marks is getting yourself closer to that goal. So I think it's something that is there for people to utilise more, and I think you'll see teams using it more often.
Can we ask you about Paddy Lynch and his evolution? We saw the great scenes in Westmeath last year when they won the Tailteann Cup, and obviously, you know, Cavan didn't win it. But if they had won it, I think we'd be focused a lot more on their story and their situation this year. And I still think that there's a chance that they can cause a lot of trouble in the Ulster Football Championship. So, how important is Paddy Lynch going to be in all that?
Well, firstly, I think it's guaranteed that they're going to cause a lot of trouble. Secondly, on Paddy, the sky's the limit for him. I suppose I would have worked with him quite closely last year. Like, if you're moulding the perfect inside corner forward now, you're not looking too much further than Paddy Lynch. Left foot, right foot, power, size, good in the air, extremely accurate, brilliant free taker, pace to take his man on, brilliant finisher in terms of goals. He got 2 at the weekend. He has everything it takes to be as good as anybody in the country. And obviously there's one player in the country that is probably way out ahead of everyone else. But in terms of the second wave coming, he has every attribute that you would want to be a successful, and when I say a successful, I mean a really, really top class inter-county corner forward. And again, it's not me speaking out of school. It's now how much Paddy wants to become that player. And from the experience I have with him, he's a hard worker. He's a dedicated lad. He's a real nice fella. He's a quiet lad off the field. But he just has so many attributes, and the future is really bright for him.
The 2 games he started, I mean, Offaly kicked 10 points, 2-5 against Down in the last game as well. If he's an example to any young footballer, Seanie, it's that practice with both feet, because you trust him off either.
Honestly, boys, his skill set is so high, but that's not by chance. That's not by chance either. That's hard work. That's a lot of good work. I know a lot of the coaches that worked with him with Crystal would be of really high quality. His manager at the minute with Crystal is a really smart guy as well. So he works really hard. He's got good people around him. And like I say, the future is bright for him. But he's so good. Like you wouldn't know left or right with him. You wouldn't know the difference. Like I see him before training. He can do stuff with the ball that you just go and, oh, wow. There's not too many players that you kind of step back and they give you that bit of a wow factor, but he does.
It's funny you talking there about coaching. I can sense the excitement in your voice when you're talking about current football and coaching generally speaking. I know you're someone. Are you like a sponge when it comes to high performance and looking at other sports? I know you're a Liverpool fan, so Jurgen Klopp's example is probably coming to mind, and a keen golfer as well. So are you taking little bits from other sports and kind of bringing it into your own levels of coaching?
Look, I don't know if it's a strength or a weakness of mine, but I suppose my personality in itself is I'm obsessive. Like when I'm in something or I'm taking something on, I'm going to try and be as best as I can at it. So, if I can learn stuff off other sports, and it's something that I've delved into in terms of looking into different management techniques, looking into how people deal with play. And at the end of the day, management to me is dealing with people. So it's the same in any job. If you go into a management element of it, you've got to be able to deal with people correctly. And that's probably what you're going to live and die off in terms of management. Yes, you can be the most tactically astute person in the world. Yes, you can be the best technical coach in the world. You can have such a technical knowledge of attack and play, defensive play, how the tackle is. But at the end of the day, it comes down to people and getting those people to buy into what you want to do. And like I say, you can have all those skills in the world, and if you can't manage people, they're not going to buy into it for you.
We're nearly out of time, but what's going on with Kildare, Seanie?
They're in a precarious predicament. I was looking up, their scoring ratio at the minute: 13 points the first game, 7 points the second game. They got 16 against Clare, 7 against Terry, 12 against Louth. So mainly they're not scoring enough. I used the figure of 19, 20 magic numbers there. They haven't hit it once this year. And they're in a precarious situation because obviously if they're in the bottom 2 to go to the Tailteann Cup, but if they finish 6th, I think there's a good chance they're going to go to the Tailteann Cup as well, because if Cavan, Down or Fermanagh reach an Ulster final, then that knocks the 6th place in Division 2 into the Tailteann Cup. So, yeah, they have a couple of tricky ties. They have winnable games, it's the important thing to say. They have Limerick away, I think, next, and then they have Meath at home. So they really need to win those 2 games. They need to get their key players back in the field. I know Kevin Feely's back. What a player he is after a bad injury. They need to get, they were missing Jimmy Hyland the last day. He's top quality player. So they need to get their best players playing. But yeah, it's not a good place for them at the minute.
One thing that we did want to get your final thoughts on was whether or not some of those teams, so Meath, it looks like might be okay at this stage, and they obviously could equally end up qualifying through Leinster. But would a Meath or a Kildare, or like even kind of we saw Down last season, not being too bothered about the Tailteann Cup, those teams who would consider themselves Sam Maguire standard, I don't know, looking around for the right word there, but quality, standard, whatever, entitlement, will they take the Tailteann Cup seriously, do you think?
Well, I'll put it like this to you. Cavan were in the Tailteann Cup last year, and Cavan had won the Ulster Championship in 2020. Have a broad history around the sport. Have 5 All-Irelands, obviously a long time ago, but there's a huge culture there of GA, like there is in Meath and Kildare. I don't think you are where you are right now, and I think it's really important. And the Tailteann Cup got a lot of profile last year, maybe not as much as I would like it to get, because I think it's a fantastic competition. But I really think the scenes around Mullingar last year should set the scene for what it can do for a team. Like Westmeath still have a really good chance to go to Division 2. I know the hurt that losing the Tailteann Cup final had in our own county here, and for the players, for the management team, it was a difficult one to take. So look, you are where you are, and you're there because of your performances. And the Tailteann Cup final gives you a really, really good carrot at the end of the stick in terms of it gets you back into the All-Ireland without having to worry about the National League last year. So you can see Cavan this year, they're going hell for leather. And they've been, to be honest, they've been so unlucky with the Connacht Championship draw that even winning Division 3 doesn't guarantee them a route into the All-Ireland, which at the beginning of the year, before the draws came out, they would have thought that was the case. So, look, it's a really good competition. As you say, Meath will probably stay out of it, but yeah, it's something I think to be embraced.
Who's going to win Ulster and who's going to win the All-Ireland, Seanie? Nice, easy one for you.
Look, to me, the All-Ireland is so wide open this year, but I mean that in the best possible way, because you're still going to be looking at a lot of the same teams. But the teams in the second tier now, and I'm talking Derry, Galway, Mayo after last year, they're not in the Kerrys and Dublins. They got quite a bit of a hiding by Kerry last year in the All-Ireland. So I think those teams now have a real opportunity. There's an opportunity there for a team to potentially come out of the blue. Who's going to win the All-Ireland? People will laugh at me now. I'm going to say Mayo, which is just the most maddest thing I think I've ever come across saying, because I've said Mayo for years and they never got across the line, but they're phenomenal and I love watching them and I love what they bring to it. Who's going to win Ulster? I think it'll be a Derry Cavan final, and at the minute you'd have to say Derry are favourites in that game, but Cavan won't fear Derry, I don't think, and I'd give them every opportunity going in, but I'd say Derry would probably go back to back, which would be an unbelievable achievement for them.
Sorry, that was great. I can imagine that sitting down with the two lads for the podcast was a bit like having teeth pulled, because who wants to revisit something as traumatic as that? But it seems like it's been good for you, so I wish you the very best today with the text and well wishes that are going to come your way, because we didn't get into it, but there's like a darkness to that story as well that I think you cover really well in the podcast, so we wish you the very best with that, and
thanks very much.
Looking forward to the next phase of your managerial career.
Guys, thanks very much, and thanks very much for having me on. Much appreciated.
That's brilliant there. Seanie Johnston, former Cavan and erstwhile Kildare footballer for a while. That was really interesting.
Jeez, yeah. Fascinating guy.
Yeah.
Great talker. And like, it's such an interesting story, and the way he deals with it now, and the fact that it's taken him so long to kind of open up about a lot of the things that centred around that transfer saga, because I'm sure people at the time were like, who's this twat moving counties, one man, one county and all the rest, but he's such a good speaker, and you need to know the background to some of these stories, and Seanie explains it so well.
Yeah. So,
and Mayo for the All-Ireland, by the way, as well.
Oh yeah. Mayo fans are delighted.
Yeah.
Cameron, good morning to you.
Good morning. Yeah, absolutely delighted with that. It's cold out there at the moment, but when you start hearing Mayo for the All-Ireland, summer's not too far away. Yeah. So that was a nice bit of Mayo charm given from Seanie.
A couple of quick comments. Danny Mack wants to know, what will the band do to Ireland's call this week?
And
the Scots don't need to do that. They're self-confident enough that they can let us have our rousing rendition of Ireland's call and still beat us, right?
Well, Cameron was in the Stadio Olimpico for the Italy game. Readily chanting and singing the Italian national anthem, which I'd have an issue with. Great anthem and all, but patriotism is supposed to be fair.
You
get involved in the occasion.
Yeah, you go
hand
to
your chest if you want, but
no. Are
you going to be singing Flower of Scotland on Sunday afternoon?
No, because Scotland might win. So
well, Italy, that's okay.
I remember we went. Was it the 0-0 John O'Shea game? Was that we were all singing the Marseillaise at the start of that?
I suppose.
The Ireland fans were like getting involved.
You know the words.
It completely punctures and you're like, what's going to happen here? The fans are going to kill us. Oh no, John O'Shea, what did you?
yeah, it takes the sting out of it.
When was that? That was Brian Kerr's. Was that a 0-0? Does anybody?
Good question. Someone tell us in the comments. What do you see?
Do we have 2 0-0s? Am I mixing this up? Why can I not remember these things where I'm actually at them?
Old age. Cameron probably, you speak French, so you probably know Marseillaise off by heart as well.
I'm trying to learn all of the Six Nations anthems. So,
really?
The Welsh is proving the hardest.
Yeah,
and I don't necessarily need to sing God Save the Queen or King now.
No, you definitely don't need that.
Yeah, don't really want to do that one. But the Welsh one is a bit of fun to sing as well. But it's just, it helps you get into the spirit of the occasion, especially when you're away. and there was a family in front of us. They turned around to see 3 Irish people, very clearly Irish, with their pasty white skin, belting out the Italian national anthem, and went, "Okay, enjoy the game, guys."
It's a strange one.
Chelsea to be the only Premier League club to get through to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Liverpool and City will flop. I mean, Liverpool flopping 5-2 down in the Bernabeu. You're putting your neck out there, but the City thing, I mean, it's right there for Leipzig if they want it.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what happened. Jerry, you're going to have to apologise to Daniel Harris. Nathan upset him on Monday, says Paul McCabe. I'm sure he'll come back. We've already done Ange, the man for Spurs. Nervous of Scotland? Nonsense, says Ross Cowell. John Mack says Ireland will do a number on Scotland on Sunday.
I like confidence to a certain degree, but I mean, overconfidence is a dangerous thing. But then the team aren't being complacent whatsoever, you'd imagine. So
yeah,
let the fans say what they want.
It feels a little bit like Scotland are in a similar stage of evolution as Ireland were kind of in the early Schmidt era. Hopefully it's early Schmidt and not early Andy Farrell, because obviously Ireland have then gone on to become the best team in the world for a little period of time. Just a tiny window here. We're the best at the moment, and obviously we need to keep that going. Otherwise it's all pointless when the World Cup rolls around. But this is the bit where you drag Scotland into the deep water and you beat them. And you beat them well, and you say, no, you're not as good as us. And so don't be thinking about beating us in the World Cup. You want to be focusing all your energy and effort on upsetting South Africa.
Yeah.
Because they could easily do that.
Yeah. I think I've said this point before with my friends, that Scotland, we are to Scotland what France were to us in the noughties, where we were probably on an even footing, but we just couldn't beat them for whatever reason. Yeah. They were our bogey team, and we're probably Scotland's bogey team, in that no matter how well they're doing in a championship, there's just something about when they come up against Ireland, the mistakes that we hadn't seen in the previous rounds really come out and punish them. So I feel like there's probably, I mean, what happened to France after the noughties? They still went well, didn't they?
I mean, obviously, famously, Vincent Clerc scores in the last minute to beat us in the game in Croke Park, which prevented us from doing a Grand Slam. So who's going to be our Vincent Clerc this week?
Mac, go on. Why not? Great hair, like Vincent Clerc does. So I would back Mac to do that.
Two handsome mofos. Right, Cameron, you're actually here to tell us about your chat with Conán O'Donnell.
Yes, yeah, I was chatting to him yesterday. Conán, who's playing with Toronto Arrows at the moment. So he's originally from Sligo, was part of that really, really good under-20s Ireland team in 2015-2016. Missed out on the World Championship when they beat the All Blacks that time in 2016, and it was like, when you go through that team, James Ryan, Andrew Porter, Hugo Keenan was there, Jacob Stockdale. So I wonder what happened to those guys. It's a brilliant team. Colm just missed out on that World Championship, but played with Connacht for a few years, was in that Pro 14 winning side. Then in 2019, Connacht released him. He went over to the Sunwolves in Japan, then did pre-season with the Crusaders, then played a few Super Rugby games for the Highlanders, played Mitre 10 Cup, or whatever it's called now, the New Zealand Amateur Cup side. Went up to Northland in Whangarei and is now in Toronto. So, I mean, he's kind of been everywhere. He's a well-travelled rugby player, a real journeyman in the truest sense. But like the people he's worked with at this stage, he worked with Scott Robertson at the Crusaders and learned a lot from him. He's saying in this interview, he's worked under Pat Lam, he's played with Sonny Bill. Like, this guy is just kind of the knowledge he must have absorbed at this stage.
Well, plenty of life experience for only a lad who's 26. Even if you want a bit of wanderlust or wanderlust jealousy, go on to Conán O'Donnell's Wikipedia page, and the photograph is him holding a surfboard on a beach in Mount Maunganui. Like, it's brilliant. Blue skies, sandy beaches. He's lived a life.
Exactly. And he turns 27 in May. He still wants to play for Ireland, and I mean, if we're using Johnny Sexton's career as the barometer, he's still got a good 3 World Cups ahead of him. So he could still come back. His ambition is to come back, obviously. But I mean, Toronto, just as it's starting to get warm again, wouldn't be the worst place to be at the moment.
No, nice to do this part of the season. Their season's just kicking off, is it?
Yeah, the MLR, Major League Rugby. So I think they're into round 4. They had a bye week, and there's a lot of travel because I think Toronto are the only Canadian team in an otherwise American league.
Yeah.
So they're down to New Orleans. They were in Atlanta a few weeks ago. New York.
There's a San Diego team, I think.
There's a San Diego team.
Seattle team.
LA. Think there's a Chicago team this year, Chicago Hounds. My brother's a real rugby hipster, so he's telling me all about it. And he still hasn't got the jersey yet. I think that's true hipsterdom, but there's a lot of travel. Like we kind of look at the Irish teams going down to South Africa and think, God, that's horrible. But they stay there for a few weeks, whereas these guys are on the road constantly. I don't think Toronto have a game at home until week 6, which is incredible. But other than that, you wouldn't mind it.
No, plenty of air miles. I wonder, did the Major League Rugby have as crap chance amongst the fan bases as Major League Soccer? I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I'd like to think it's fairly crap chanting. That's what you want in those sports.
Fight and win.
Yeah, fight and win.
Yeah.
We're
like that.
We're going to stomp you out. Yeah.
All right.
You look lonely. That was the one over to David Beckham, wasn't it?
Or my favourite, the referee's a wanker outside the ground before the game.
Yeah.
I thought it was
fantastic.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
But this chat is really, really good. Conán is really great talker, very, very engaging person, as you'll see. So looking forward to premiering that now.
All right, well, let's get into that. Before that, OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. On tomorrow's show, Ron Nogara, Alan Quinlan, Cork's Gemma O'Connor, Stewie Byrne and Shayna Cook, the Girls in Green colouring book and the Fire Pit, all alongside Adrian and Shane. Right now, Cameron's chat with Conán O'Donnell. Have a gorgeous day.
Okay, you're welcome back to OTB AM. Conán O'Donnell of the Toronto Arrows is joining me today. Conán, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Can't complain. Just rolled out of bed there. So.
We're complaining about the weather here. It's a brisk 4 degrees in Ireland at the moment. We're complaining, saying it's a bit too cold and stuff. Maybe you can put some perspective on us. What's the weather like in beautiful Toronto, Canada?
Well, it's actually real sunny today, but it's -2 degrees at the same time, but it doesn't feel like it outside. The weather's very different here. There was blizzards all last week, but I was actually away for a few days because we had a bye week, and my flight was actually cancelled on the way back. So,
brilliant!
Unfortunately, couldn't make it back for training because of the runways are just filled with snow. So,
excellent.
Had to miss Monday, so it wasn't too good. But
okay, well, me deciding it's a bit too cold to be running. I feel even worse now.
We train in a tent, in fairness. So
okay, it's like that bad.
It's a pressurized cabin. Some days it is genuinely.
Wow, that's crazy.
But okay. I think I'd rather it over the sports ground rain any day.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Okay, so weather and travel restrictions aside, you joined. When did you arrive in Toronto?
On the 3rd of January. So
okay.
Was that like 2 months ago nearly? Just over 2 months.
Wow. And how are you finding it so far? How are you settling in?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay.
I suppose it's a real exciting competition, a lot of travel around America. And then obviously an opportunity to play rugby professionally is always the goal and dream. So I'm really enjoying that. And I've never actually lived in a big city before. So kind of the opportunity to live in a city and play professional rugby there is kind of a no-brainer for me. So I'm over the moon with the decision so far.
Yeah, and you've plenty of Irish there with you at the Arrows. Am I right in thinking Shane O'Leary and Noel Reid, formerly of Leinster, are there with you as well?
Yeah, and then we have an Irish S&C coach as well who actually worked with Blackrock.
Oh, brilliant.
And Shane's his name as well. And he used to play in the Premiership with London Welsh, I think it was. London Welsh, not Scottish, yeah.
Brilliant. So plenty of Irish there anyway to keep you company.
Yeah.
I've looked at the results for the Arrows. They haven't been great so far, it has to be said. But how does it work? How does Major League Rugby work to the layperson like myself?
I suppose.
Is it playoffs at the end of the season?
I'm trying to think. There's not much difference to it. They have it's kind of that American, because we're the only Canadian team, but it is American League. It has that like American twist on, the East and the West Conference.
Okay.
We're in the East Conference, so we play every team home and away, I think, and then we have 1 or 2 crossover games in between that.
and then top 3 in each conference go top 4. I actually don't know. I should find that out. Hopefully we'll be in it anyways.
Yeah, if you have extra games at the end of the season, I guess we did well this year.
Yeah, so I think so. Yeah, top 3, and then you go into like a semi-final and you win your conference as well. So
okay, so yeah, it's quite North American.
Basically, like a Super Bowl at the end of it for the MLR Shield.
Right. And how do you find the travel? I've noticed that you've had a lot of away games so far. Is the travel a bit of a drag? Like it is, I don't know if people want to get a map of North America, it's pretty big.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably the beauty of the East Conference. A lot of your games are on the East Coast, so it's not as much travel as if we were to go to, say, San Diego. It would be like probably like 6 or 7 hours, is it?
Yeah,
could be longer. I've never actually floated before, but that isn't too bad. Like, I suppose the biggest trouble is because we're the only team that's internationally, so we have to travel a bit early in the airport. I find the travel days itself drag out just because you have to go through pre-clearance. And if it was a domestic flight, it would be okay. But the fact that it's not, we have to like do all that niggly detail and have visas organized and all that. But I suppose, and then obviously currency conversions because we're getting paid in Canadian dollars. That's probably the biggest niggly bit about being the only Canadian team. But I assume if you were a team based in America, it wouldn't be as bad. Like, I suppose traveling the URC, you do a lot of travel as well. Or even if you play in the Challenge Cup I've never played in the Highland Cup, it's the same. You probably have to have big bus journeys in France away from the airports and long days away. So I'm kind of used to it at this stage, but don't really think too much into it.
No, you've one thing's for sure, you've done plenty of travel over your playing career.
Few air miles racked up at this stage.
So just for like, I think it's like my brother's really into MLR and he's a real rugby hipster. So I know you've only been there for 2 months, but it's anything jumped out to you about the rugby culture over in North America so far? Anything that's sort of different to how it would be here?
I think you just have to listen to the commentary for a few minutes to realise it's a bit, it's a bit different. I won't say anything, but just take a listen for yourself. The rugby's very enjoyable though.
Okay.
It's quite a very forward-oriented game, I've noticed. Kind of similar to like kind of English rugby, just a lot of mauling, scrummaging, and very different because I was in New Zealand before and it was very like kind of fast, high intensity, a lot of ball and play, but kind of gone full circle again back to that kind of forward-oriented rugby.
Right. And what made you decide to go to Toronto? I mean, was it just a case of here's the offer, I've only one career, I'll just go here and see what happens? Or what was the thought process?
To be honest, I was kind of about to hang up the boots in December. I booked a flight home from New Zealand and was just going to go home for Christmas, enjoy the Christmas, and then kind of assess what I'll do work-wise after rugby. And then, I kind of was about to go home and reach out to people and see what was out there, but then this opportunity came up. I was like talking to Shane O'Leary and he goes, "Oh, do you want to come to Toronto?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." So he asked the coaches and then they just like, rang me up, "What's your plan?" I was like, "Oh, well, I'm going back to Ireland now, but I've been in New Zealand the last 3 years." And then they were like, "Do you want to come play for us?" And I was like, "It's only 6 months." So I said, "Yeah, why not?" And then I can reassess after that again. Might as well keep the dream alive for another few months.
Yeah, wow. I didn't realize it had come to that point. Gosh, that's incredible. So like, because you're from Sligo originally, and you would have played in Sligo Rugby Club. I read this as well. You started out as a winger. For those of you who don't know, Conán plays a tight head prop. Is that correct?
Yeah, either or, tight head or loose head.
Tight header. And so winger to prop doesn't really seem like a lateral move. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I was a young, skinny kid sprinting in the community games back in the day, Genetic freak. Those fast twitch fibres. But then Forstall Pizza came to Sligo and probably indulged too much in it as a young fella. And then Yeah, probably. Probably a blessing in disguise. If something tells me I wouldn't be playing professional rugby as a winger.
Yeah,
but no.
Because I remember seeing you play like for Connacht and schools rugby and stuff, and I was sort of surprised at the level of technical skill you had. There was obviously some sort of backs history there.
I don't think it was from that now, to be honest. I was quite young when I moved, so probably
right, okay.
Probably just would have been through good coaching and stuff like that would have involved that.
And then you were involved with the under-20s way back in like 2015, 2016. I was just going through the squad that you were a part of, like some of the names like Hugo Keenan, Stockdale, James Ryan, Jimmy O'Brien, Andrew Porter. I mean, you'd wonder where they are now. When you played alongside those guys and growing up, and obviously the talent you would have been playing with in the Connacht Academy and against sometimes, did you have a sense that they were going to be like the world-class players that they are now, or is that obvious from that stage?
It really is, yeah. I think especially in James Ryan's case, I think we all knew he was destined for what he's done, really.
Okay.
But even at schools rugby, because I would have played under 18 schools with him as well. And he was kind of like just such a leader.
Leadership.
He had all the qualities. You just looked at him, you're like, okay, he's the man. He's going places.
Yeah, wow. Just leadership.
The boys, obviously.
Okay.
But
and
yeah,
is it? Yeah.
He was very good, hardworking, and was just very diligent.
Mm-hmm.
You could just tell he kind of had the tools in the armory for it.
That's very interesting. Because you assume that leadership just comes later on in your career, but when as you mature. But he was captain of that 2016 side that went really well at the World Cup. It's remarkable that he had that already. And were they just really good specimens? Were like that kind of Michael's crew just incredible athletes from the off?
I think so. Sounds like they just probably, it's kind of like the rugby nursery, isn't it? They must be doing something right in that school.
Yeah.
Because it seems to just be churning out players every year. I think they had, there was a weird stat there, wasn't it? It was like, they had 6 Ireland under 20 captains in a row.
Wow, I didn't see that. That's incredible.
Yeah, because even the year before, Nick McCartney was our captain as well.
Okay, the scrum half.
Yeah, and he went to Michael's too.
Wow.
And then I'm pretty sure the year after was a Michael fellow too.
Yeah, it's famously the conveyor belt, but I didn't realize it was that stark. Jeez.
Nah, it's okay. They must be doing something right there.
Yeah, there's something in the water there. Come back to Connacht. Why did you end up leaving? Was it just a case of they weren't going to renew your contract, or did you want to take another adventure, or how did that come about?
Yeah, it probably just wasn't in my hands, to be honest. I had the option to stay, I would have. And then they just probably had a couple of young lads coming through and probably didn't see a future for me, so didn't renew my contract. And then I was pretty fortunate enough to actually get that whole some of things pop up overnight, and then that kind of just helped me keep playing. But I suppose if that didn't happen, I probably would have been, I don't know what would have happened. I didn't really have anything else at the time. So
yeah. Because looking at your CV, I implore anybody to go off and have a look at the clubs you've been at. But just very quickly, you went to Japan obviously after that, and then it was, I think, Crusaders and Canties Manukau, and then you went up to Whangarei to Northland and played with the Highlanders as well. Now you're in Toronto. That's the CV of a well-traveled adventurer. I know your sister teaches languages and has a real appreciation for culture and has lived abroad a good bit as well. Is that something that's in you too? Did you just want to look, I've got this tool here, this opportunity to see as much of the world as possible, I'm going to go wherever? Or was it a case of, you just go where the opportunities are? Or was there any sort of forethought?
It kind of just happens.
Okay.
Yeah, I suppose always like when you're growing up, the dream is to stay in Galway and play for Connacht as long as you can, and then obviously hope to kick on to higher honours. But then I think things have probably worked out for the better, to be honest. I probably
I would definitely say that. My God.
Yeah. Looking back at it now, I'm like, Jesus, I'm kind of happy it didn't work out the way I wanted to. No, I've had a great time. I loved it. Obviously, I'm still loving Toronto, and then if anything happens after this, then great. If not, well, I've had awesome times. So I kind of have to be thankful for everything that's happened. I know I'm very lucky. Like, I know a lot of people probably are better than me or work slightly harder than me, and then might get the same opportunities I have. So I'll probably just have to enjoy it and make the most of it, because a lot of them have been once in a lifetime opportunities. So yeah, you'd be a fool to turn them down, wouldn't you?
For sure. Like, I was looking at the people you've been working with. You played with Sonny Bill Williams in the Mitre 10 Cup, for instance. Did you ever cross paths with Scott Robertson when you were at the Crusaders?
Yeah, so I was kind of in and out of that environment for about two and a half seasons. So I know him pretty well.
Okay.
We get on great. He's a legend. And then I remember my first time in New Zealand. Obviously, I wouldn't have known much about New Zealand rugby. I don't actually watch a whole pile of rugby, to be honest. But it was when I moved to counties. It's in the middle of nowhere in Pukekohe. But I remember just like looking at TV, because I had just been with the Sunwolves. So I think we got knocked out early and we didn't go to the playoffs or anything like that. So I kicked into training with counties, and I remember just Crusaders bet the Jaguars in the final. I remember it was just on the news, and they had doing the little breakdance thing.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
I was just like, in my head, I was like, wow, imagine being there. That'd be the coolest thing ever to witness. Like this just like unbelievable breakdancing, and everyone just sing along. And then little did I know, like 8 months later, I was in that circle witnessing him breakdance when they won the final the year after. So it was, I was just like thinking, geez, I was in Pukekohe a few months ago, just wishing I was there. But I know I wasn't playing or anything, but being involved in the squad was pretty cool.
That must have been incredible. But like the amount of people you've been under now, you've worked with Pat Lam as well. Like, surely coaching is like, you're made for coaching at this stage. The amount of stuff you must have absorbed at this, even at 26.
I mightn't have the ability, but I definitely have like the rugby knowledge after having all these great coaches. Like I've had the best coach in the world over the last 2-3 years, even longer, 4 years. And even Pat before that. So I've just, I feel I never really thought about going into coaching until maybe a year ago. I'm like, maybe I should. Like, I have all this knowledge from all these lads. I probably should utilize it a bit more. But
even if it's like just to sit in the corner and talk about like everywhere you've been, I think that'd be useful.
I know.
Like, give us a sense of like the New Zealand rugby culture, because it's world famous. You know, we talk about this is rugby country in Ireland, and people get really annoyed about it. That is rugby country, and it's famously rugby country. But when you were going over, did the culture of how rugby is treated there, was it exactly what you expected, or were you surprised in any way about how much or even how little it bleeds into daily life? Like, what is it like?
I think it just depends on where you are in the country in itself. It's kind of like Ireland, you know, some places are GA strongholds, hurling strongholds. And then obviously like South Dublin will be the rugby stronghold, and Limerick as well. But yeah, New Zealand, I suppose, where you are, like, because some places are just like in the middle of nowhere and they just live and breathe rugby. Some places they even like prefer rugby league, depending on where you are, and like the demographic there as well. But I found in Christchurch especially, it's like just a big rugby bubble there. Like, everyone loved it. Like it was just everything. I can probably shows why the Crusaders and Canterbury have been so successful over the years. And then I don't know. It is like big there, but I feel like it's not as big as it used to be. Like, even if you look at the dying attendances, I think it's probably New Zealand's probably there's kind of more to do there than there was probably a few years ago, and people are probably just like not looking at rugby as much, but it is big there. It genuinely is, and the rugby culture in itself and teams and stuff is great as well. Boys just froth it like.
Yeah, well, what do you think that's about? Why do you think there are dying attendances?
I think a lot of people actually used to prefer like MPC, the Mitre 10 Cup or whatever it's called now. Has a new name every year. But apparently there was like massive crowds back in the day. Like
Okay.
North of like 15 to 20,000 in like some rival games, and then obviously Super Rugby came in and that dwindled because of Super Rugby, and then I think probably the South African teams going out, and people are probably just the same thing over and over again. People are probably just like, oh, kind of want something different. And then obviously, you know, like nowadays there's like so much social media and obviously more television deals going on in rugby as well. So people probably rather go at home, watch it there. Or little kids probably just prefer doing their own thing, like gaming or going on TikToks and all that. So I suppose the interest, there's just more general interest for people. So rugby is probably just not as like appealing to some people, probably because there's so much to do out there now.
Yeah, it's like the heart is gone from it or something. Certainly that's the line that's sort of peddled usually. When they take you in and when they see what you're about, are there things they're looking for out of Irish players? I know when All Black export comes over to Munster, say, there's certain characteristics of like this huge big player who's also really technically gifted. Are there things that we're famous for in the rest of the world that we don't know about? That it's like, oh, an Irish player is going to bring this to my team. That's a certainty.
Probably just the work rate.
Okay.
And then maybe a bit of technicality as well. I suppose I would have learned a lot from my coaches in Ireland about just the importance of like knowing your role and being very technical, kind of robotic at times, but it kind of works. Yeah, probably just the work rate is probably the big thing we're known for, and then just that attention to detail.
Yeah. So I saw you said that your ambition still is to come back and play for Ireland at some point. Let's say tomorrow morning, Andy Friend or Pete Wilkins give you the call and say, we need injury cover badly. Are you on the first flight home, or are you going to stick out the MLR season, or what would you do in that situation? A straightforward question with a horrible answer, I'm sure.
Yeah. All depends if, I suppose because I'm under contract, it all depends if you're allowed to be released and all that sort of stuff. So power isn't in my hands, unfortunately.
Yeah. But you still, like, you're 27 by the time the World Cup rolls around. If you have a Johnny Sexton trajectory, that's like 3 World Cups. You still have a chance of playing for Ireland. It's still very much in the back of your mind that you'd love to come back here. You wouldn't.
It's been ambitious, but yeah, I suppose it's always the dream, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I suppose every professional rugby player wants to represent their country, but at the moment, I'm not being any delusional. I know it's not really achievable when you're playing in Canada. So obviously, a few things have to go in my favour for that to happen. But if not, sure luck.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you have to trade it for, like, you've done a lot as well in your career. It's been incredible. Finally, I don't know if you're following much of the Six Nations this year, but there's a big old game in Murrayfield this weekend. Do you think we're going to beat the Scots?
I think we should, yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose we have the ability in the team there. So I think a few boys have come back from injuries, haven't they?
Yeah,
I haven't been watching the news too much, but I've seen a few headlines. So.
Yeah, a few guys actually. You would have played with them at under 20 level. They're doing well, if you didn't know. A few of them.
Yeah, I know. They've won every game, haven't they?
Yeah, doing quite well. I mean, with you there, who knows? Could push on to bigger and greater things. But look, that's ifs and buts and whatnot. But listen, Conán, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. Best of luck for the rest of the season, and enjoy that Toronto sunshine.
Cheers. Thanks a million. Have a good evening.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Off the ball.
And he also said to ask him...